the North American SEC this time, 2 best-of-3 sets over in NA. And just as the EU sets were very important, remember, this is the final week of the SEC for this phase. The top 4 teams from each of these regions, each of the 2 regions, will qualify in to the next round of the playoff events. And so, standings, things like that, very important over here in North America, just as it was over in EU. I've already been here today. My name's Dolson. GoreMizer here for the first time, though, today. You missed a couple back-to-back 3 gamers there, Gore.
I was watching them. I saw them happen.
Were you watching, Gore?
Yeah. Mamba would have won in 2 if it weren't for Johnny DC, and that's
Johnny
I'm going to stand by it, man.
Johnny wanted to make things a little bit more interesting.
Intense in Europe, right?
A little bit more intense in Europe. Things
are still intense.
They still are intense over here in North America as well. Again, our matchup right now, the Kaolin Wardens up against the Xibalba Storm, but that is only one of 2 North American matches that we've got for you today. Yeah. We've got another one after this one, and then remember we've got a 3rd North American set a bit later on this weekend. So, Xibalba Storm, Kaolin Wardens right now, Yomi Tanuki versus Athenian Sages after this, and then if you want to catch the final North American set of the week, the Eldritch Hounds, the North American powerhouse team going up against the Anansi Weavers. You'll have to wait before broadcast on Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time will be that. But Dave, why are these matches so important? Well, Dave, it's because the top 4 teams from each of these regions. Thanks for asking. Top 4 teams from the regions go through to the playoff event, and wouldn't you look at that? Yomi Tanuki and Anansi Weavers, they've both got 1 win. Xibalba Storm, Sages, Wardens, they've all got 2 wins. And so, outside of the Eldritch Hounds, tiebreakers, head-to-head, all these sorts of things come into the mix. Really, for the Wardens and the Storm, Gore, the winner of this one confirms a spot in, right? They've improved to 3 and 2. The loser would drop down to 2 and 3. And so depending on what happens with those bottom 2 teams, the 2 and 3 team might not feel super confident with a couple teams on the outside looking in. So absolutely, we come down to the final week here between these 2.
Nobody except the Wardens, the Hounds are feeling comfortable, right? And it's weird for them because they just get to kind of coast. Like, they could just not show up this week and still be fine. Granted, they're still probably going to show up, play, and do incredibly well. But this is the other thing, the other half of that, right? It's not just Masters. You know, you mentioned the top 4, but bottom 2 go into relegations with the SOC teams as well. Right. So, like, there's a chance that you lose your spot if you don't do well here as well. So you really need to clean up as much as you can to make sure that things are successful for you.
Well, Gore, let's see if in picks and bans for game number 1, the meta between North America and EU feels different at all this week. As a reminder, for those of you who are either just now watching, welcome in, or forgotten the rosters, the Kaolin Wardens team made up of RelentlessOne, Cyno, Moswal, the headliners for this team, and then Geno and Griff, of course, a very strong duo lane. Xibalba Storm, that's Uzzy, Magicfeet, Joshy, Oceans, and InMyZen. And again, the Xibalba Storm, a team that has gone back and forth, up and down with a lot of the talent that we've got here in NA. So already a couple of shifts from the sets that we've seen earlier on today. Gore Freya was let through a couple times, at least in the first set of the day from what I saw. Chernobog was really not looked at much at all. Kepri took a couple standout games to finally start getting banned in our first set of the day. And Yamoja as well. So a bit more
God nor demon can
support,
defeat me.
carry, aggression style of bans here, where it felt like late game scaling style of bans over in EU. One big change is the Raven makes it through. That's not something I saw in any of the 3 games earlier on today.
Yeah, and Raven's been in a really weird spot anyway, because he is, you know, we saw it a couple of weeks ago, capable of, you know, surviving, withstanding a lot of damage. In some of those circumstances, living through it because of his own healing, maybe Soul Eaters built into their kit, also has a lot of damage to deal out. But over the weeks, it's dimmed a lot, right? A little bit of bonus patch, a little bit of nerfs that show up for him that end up taking that away. But also just the style of play allowed him to get away with a lot, and I'm wondering if the Storm are going to be able to make that work. We started to see it disappear in the SPL pretty much last week, so it's going to be on the fence as to whether or not this is as successful as the first pick as it has been in the past.
Kumbhakarna ends up being the lock-in. That is something, if we see it over in EU, it feels like it's something Deathwalker may be playing in the solo lane. I get the idea that this may end up being a support Kumbhakarna, as well as a Chiron. And I think Chiron has flown under the radar a bit, not so much at the SPL level, but in the late game scaling, ability-based hunter conversation. Chiron is always like the next one in outside of the Ullers and the AMCs of the world. a late game full build Centaurus that you then just immediately detonate shreds. It
Yes.
melts backliners. And so if you're looking at a Raven for late game damage mitigation scaling and Chiron for late game damage scaling, it's a good start here for the Xibalba Storm. Erlang, Shen, Ratatoskr, and Sylvanus on the flip side.
Yeah.
Gore, initiation I don't think is much of an issue for the Wardens this game.
No, right? I mean, the worst initiation on their team right now. Well, technically he's going to be Heimdallr, but even still, he's got some good initiation in there if he really wants it. But Sylvanus pulls, the only problem that ever comes with Sylvanus to me is how consistent you are with them. But I think we've seen it, and I think we even saw it in the SPL last week. Hit those pulls, you're going to be golden. So I expect a lot out of this, like you said, with the Ratatoskr being able to leap in, the 9 turns blessing from the Erlang Shen. There's a lot of potential for fight. And based on the comps that I'm seeing right now, and anticipating this to be a Raven jungle going up against the Erlang, you do still have a little bit of early game pressure. I think the Raven's going to match that pretty well, though. If that had been a Raven solo and Erlang was in the jungle against some other, pretty much most assassins, he probably would have had an edge.
Whoa, Vulcan. We've gotten one Vulcan game so far this phase. Actually, might have been the Wardens, but the Doom Orb style of build. Do we see a Vulcan in the dual lane in the SPL? Is that what I'm thinking of?
Like, recently?
I don't know what I'm thinking of. I could have sworn we saw that. Into game number 1 we go, as the Vulcan ends up being the final pick of the draft for the Kaolin Wardens. Xibalba Storm, Kaolin Wardens closely knit as far as standings go. And of course it'll be Moswal on the Vulcan this game up against Joshy. But 2 totally different team dynamics here, Gore. Of course, Magicfeet and Cyno, the jungle ebb and flow, I think is going to be very, very fun. This game, the Raven up against the Erlang Shen. But a Morrigan Cthulhu composition, that is just a tale as old as time. And so you stick a Raven in the jungle, but you're not necessarily losing out on much of that late game damage tankiness that you might have otherwise had.
I mean, it's about as classic as you can get for team fights, right? You've got 2, well, at that point, technically, 2 huge ultimates garner a lot of attention, and there's not a lot of burn on the other side. Normally the conversation when there's a Cthulhu is, okay, well, they're dealing with a nemesis, they're dealing with 2 gods that are going to really heavily use chin size and burn through the health bar well. Heimdallr can hit hard. If you stick to him, I guess you could go that route similarly for RelentlessOne or Cyno, but like it feels like you're not going to want a lot of the itemization against a Cthulhu on a majority of the gods here for the Kaolin Warriors. So that's going to end up being, I think, a pretty big staple for the Storm to find success as their team fight in the late game.
Decent little pull there from Geno. And it feels like that is going to have to be the counter that we have going in our minds, Gore. The Sylvanus pull, how effective is Geno at hitting them just in general, because Sylvanus feels like such an ebb and flow style of support. Some games the player playing it is just missing everything, and you might as well not have a support on your team. But when you get into the flow state, you close your eyes, you pinch the fingers together, and all the pulls are connected. It's just such a difference-making style of pick. A little bit of chunk damage exchanged over in mid. And the mid lane battle should be fun as well, Gore. Moswal feels like a Moswal style of pick with the Vulcan.
Honestly, it's not only does it feel like a Moswal style pick, it's something that, like you said, fits just very similarly into, I want to say, how this team likes to play. When you get the op washes, you get some of these others, they're mostly immobile, but just have a huge amount of burst. Vulcan, I will say, is very dependent on whether or not you're going to hit his ult, I think, in some of the team fights. I think backfire, if you level the turret up first, which is always like a conversation I've seen like years and years and years. We're 10 years into Pro League play, or 9 years into Pro League play. You're gonna have the debate of, do you level the turret or do you level your 1? Most people, I think, nowadays do the 1 over the turret, but having that conversation, like the turret's well placed, can get a lot of free damage that otherwise is pretty unnoticeable for a lot of them. Like those individual shots maybe don't mean too much, but adding up over time, I think matter. So well placement of that. But just the amount of burst that a Vulcan can afford, and admittedly some self-peel with the meatball, it just makes him feel good. I like playing Vulcan. He dies a lot, and he dies easily. But you've got enough initiation on there that you should have, theoretically, the setup necessary to make it work.
Nice little pull on Oceans, but the Mez counters out any immediate follow-up. Cyno is headed over towards this side of the map, a purple buff spawning. Don't think Cyno's been spotted out. Should be a sneak invade. Pin, good for some damage, but not the actual pin. Pull in onto InMyZen. Ends up having to use the beads. Oceans has blink and has to dash away. So Moswal is also going to rotate over from mid. Three-way split on the purple buff invade, so less about the golden experience for the Wardens, but denying that from the Xibalba Storm. It did make me think.
Okay.
Talking about Vulcan and the turret specifically.
Yeah.
One guy that we've worked with in the past hated turret-style characters. Do you know who I'm thinking of?
Aggro, right?
No.
No. Oh, pretty hair.
Pretty hair.
Yeah.
and hearing you talk.
You know what? Now that I know
about
it, it's because he hates anything where he's not in control.
Yes.
He hated it.
Right, which is exactly what that made me, because I was about to joke. You're like, yeah, maybe you level up the turret and it does the damage for you. I'm like, yeah, why even play a character? You just drop the turret and you don't even get. And in the back of my head, all I could think of was Pretty Hair. And for those of you unaware, now a designer on Road Company casted Paladins with Gore and I back in the day. Actually had a sneaky SMITE caster too over the years. Hated turret-style characters because it's like, why even bother playing if you're just going to drop the turret and then stand and watch? And Barrack from Paladins, for those wondering, that's his style of gameplay. So anyway.
For a while.
It
got changed.
So anyway, that was my little trip down memory lane that made me think about. But the turrets do a lot of damage, and so yeah, unfortunately in Pretty Hair's case, have to lean into those from time to time. We've already seen Cyno get a bit active on invading the purple buff. And Magicfeet, I believe, hasn't had to go back just yet, so Cyno's been able to go back, finish up the complete golden play. The Magicfeet has just been a farming machine, has just been sitting on starter, tier 1 item. I imagine then it's the next back item purchase, go to lane somewhere where we see Magicfeet get a bit more active.
Honestly, yeah, I'm kind of surprised. Usually, and admittedly with the 9.5 patch, it changed this curve, but like, still level 3 is pretty powerful for both a Ravana and an Erlang in the right circumstances. And especially up against specifically the Vulcan. I think it could be something more like right here.
Magicfeet avoids the dunk and Uzzy in for some peel. Need to walk back, but with most of the initiation from Ravana, this one down. Mystic Rush forced. Knock up from Chino. Just no damage to get the kill onto Magicfeet. Cyno left farming. Magicfeet does leave though. Blue buff dropped. Looks like actually by the Kaolin Wardens. Uzzy. Oh, never mind. Did go and pick it up. So blue buff picked up for the Xibalba Storm. So when it's all said and done, the invade not even successful.
Honestly, if that, I want to say if that ult connects, it's a kill, just because of how low the health bar was, but I also, you know, I'm looking at Cyno, had Pin, had, I believe, ult at the time, yeah, so it would have been able to turn, I think, even more around if necessary, but it's little plays like that, man, that are going to make, I think, the biggest difference between the Storm and the Wardens here, because, and you had mentioned this earlier, but, like, just very, very accomplished players. The problem I have still is team fight for the Wardens. I just think that as this game, like, man, at level 12, this team's going to rock. But as it gets closer and closer to 20 from that point forward, you know, you start getting hit, much like real life, you start getting hit with a lot more of the real world, right? Like, the closer to 20, the more you're going to have to deal with this Cthulhu, the more that there's going to be a Morrigan in your face, the deeper and more often Magicfeet is going to be able to dive your team, deal with the backline in at least a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. And I've got to keep my eye on this Vulcan because, yes, I know Moswal, like, in my mind of minds, yes, Moswal will make this work. But there's a reason he's not necessarily the forefront and usually the one that people are going towards in terms of mid right now. So I think that that's going to be the trade-off, is how often this Raven can get back the orb, much like you had highlighted earlier, how often a Chiron can just start off a fight doing essentially half of Moswal's health with 3 good shots of Centaurus as well as a masterful shot plus, you know, the itemization. At that point, you need, what, like a Heartseeker, you'd want a Hydra's, you'll need that other one that I'm blanking on that's also really, really good for the ability damage. Titan's Bane's in there. It's in that same tree, and I cannot for the life of me.
Well, Gore, I'll give you a second to think about it.
We'll see it.
Yeah, we'll see it eventually.
I believe in it.
Taunt in onto Magicfeet. Mystic Rush used defensively. Up is RelentlessOne, ends up ducking just back down on blue buff. This time, blue buff invaded successfully by the Wardens. So Gore already we've seen pressure on the right side of the map by the Kaolin Wardens, and one good, one bad on the invade.
Yeah, and you know what? Is if you can get any amount of experience that's going in your favor, it's still wow, right? Trying to go for it. Again, I think this is their strongest point in the game.
Knock up from Geno, but one from Oceans as well, and Cyno just CC'd, but Cyno able to return damage onto Magicfeet. Joshy has the final say, and Cyno ends up falling for first blood. Now Uzzy has gone big, chasing Geno and Moswal back in this fight. Earthshaker's still there for Moswal, and Moswal uses it, catches out 3, but the damage is tiny at this point in the game. Does slow down the Storm, but only because the rest of the Wardens have disengaged.
That's going to be the problem I think that the Wardens are going to have to deal with throughout this entire game. It's just that play over and over and over again, whether it's Uzzy, whether it's Joshy, whoever is going to be the Cthulhu leading the way for them, and then the follow-up from Magicfeet, and eventually Zen is going to be too much to handle. And, in that case, you only lose Cyno, but I think in a few fights, you end up losing Moswal, you end up losing RelentlessOne, maybe Griff, right, if things don't go well for you. So how they burn down this Cthulhu might be the most important thing to me to see, because that's, you've got to do it not once but twice. Ikaval looks like, either going to be a chin size, something like an Xe, something like an Aussie. Either way, any of those items for Griff, a step in my mind the right direction. Maybe Executioner least of the 3, but either way, you're still going to feel really solid if you're able to go in there, because you're looking at, especially actually now that I'm thinking about Executioner even more, no matter what, you're opening up the capabilities either of yourself with some pin and damage on the other items, or opening up your teammates to have that same amount of damage to help burn down a Cthulhu.
I think Cyno tried to get the 9 turns blessing off, was unable to do so, because Oceans, with a nice ultimate, countered that out of Cyno. RelentlessOne uses the ult as well, actually dunks back down a bit towards mid. Joshy unable to capitalize on the aggressive positioning, though, of RelentlessOne. Haven't quite seen that Ratatoskr ultimate used for great initiation just yet. Just some small scrapping here and there. But you do already get the mindset that RelentlessOne just fine, Gore, thanks to the speediness, the semi-global presence. To step out of that lane, Uzzy's got to walk a bit further. Uzzy has teleport, that said. That's something to look forward to later in the game. But as far as immediate, kind of close range to mid-range rotational power, RelentlessOne has been pretty active. Yeah,
and the biggest thing that helps the Ratatoskr right now, despite the fact that he's not necessarily as tanky as like a warrior, as a guardian that typically goes in the solo lane, is, like you said, that mobility. You can just get out of there if things go wrong. And your dash can be blocked, so you do have to worry a little bit about that. But I think that we haven't seen RelentlessOne in a truly difficult position to get out of there. What a good pull from Geno. And again, little things like that, the engage that the Wardens have, should be so much for them. But unfortunately, it's just going to be the follow-up. And Moswal, you can see, I think will have good damage afterward. If that had been not a Kumbha, we might have gotten a better reading on that. With Chiron's coin just bought, the Dumor have already finished. You're going to have really good power, a little bit of pin in there. We had just seen the levels, but max in the 1, almost max in the turret as well. So the damage is really going to start flying. And it's a weird moment to think of, because if you're looking at that, that's 9 points. You only have 2 other points, so 1 in the 3, 1 in the ult. And Vulcan's one of those characters you could tell me you weren't leveling the ult until either after 2 abilities were maxed out, or at the very end. Like, you could wait till all 3 and I'd still be okay with it, just because the consistency of hitting that versus the consistency of hitting, one, your turret shots, that's going to be very easy for you, but also your meatball and your backfire, like, those are going to be there more often, more reliably, so it's better to invest in.
Magicfeet. The shifter shield in the back pocket. We can analyze that in a moment. It's a nice double taunt from Cyno into the knockup, but from Geno onto Magicfeet. Earthshaker down. Didn't get much though, as Ocean's now reinitiating, and InMyZen has got all the damage necessary from way downtown. And the Xibalba Storm have added another, but Ocean's into his passive. The Kaolin Wardens are going to return the favor, grab 2 kills of their own, and RelentlessOne on the rotation makes it 3.
And that's the biggest thing they've got going for them over the Storm, and they need to leverage it the entire time they can. Uzzy, eventually with the teleport's going to be able to join. In fact, even now, is willing to walk in on the Gold Fury.
Uzzy close by. RelentlessOne win this fight, kind of 50-50 split. Uzzy is low, so the Gold Fury has been dropped, and instead may just end up being a kill onto the Cthulhu. And this early in the game, you'll burn him down. And still stagger deaths. It's less guaranteed at this point, but Still may be able to get down the Gold Fury. It is burning. Ocean's close by. Is still a steal chance from the Xibalba Storm, unable to do so, and the Wardens, they grabbed 4 kills in the Gold Fury, a massive swing in game 1.
I mean, that is huge for them in every sense of the word. You get 2 kills onto RelentlessOne, again, showcasing a little bit more of that rotation power that we'll see from a Ratatoskr compared to a Cthulhu. I mean, RelentlessOne had 2 kills by the time Cthulhu made it to the mid lane, right? So he was able to make a huge impact in that, changing the numbers game for him. But you get a lot of damage out of Moswal, a good lockdown. I was almost worried. I thought Oceans was going to stand up from the Sleep of Time passive. Luckily for them, they got the autos in there. And a lot of it, other than that, is just good CC and good control, right? Geno's got good roots, good pulls, good knockups in the kit, and we got to see a little bit of that evidence there. Same thing for Griff. A really key ultimate just to take someone out of the fight, again, give you even more of a numbers advantage, and then focus your damage in there. He went for the Aussie, but along with that and the Ikaval, he's going to be hitting really hard right now. Cyno's built to hit hard right now. So between the damage dealers in the background and the amount of CC and control they have, that's the kind of fight that the Wardens need. Give them a couple more of those, and I'm a lot less worried about this Cthulhu late game than I was at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, for now, it's been managed well. But always that potential.
It's a looming threat on the horizon.
Right. And that's kind of just what Cthulhu is, isn't he?
Yeah, he's just big looming threat.
Like, over the horizon, you'll still see him. He'll be a tiny speck, but, like, he's, like, destroying a city somewhere over the horizon, but you can still see him because he's just so massive way over the horizon. That's just what Cthulhu does. And unfortunately, for the Wardens, they'll have to address that threat at some point. Have, to Gore's point, been successful in it so far. Now, feeling maybe a bit stronger. The Kaolin Wardens grouping up as 4 over on left, but there's not much to fight over on this side of the map. Purple buff is already gone. The Gold Fury was taken by the Wardens just a moment ago. We are just fighting for fighting's sake at this point. Ocean's taunted in. Earthshaker chunks some more damage down, and another pin. And this Kumbhakarna is just being chased so heavily, and a pullback in from Geno seals the deal.
And then that look, a good knockup from RelentlessOne. That's just an easy scoop up. And it feels like fighting over nothing, depending on where the team goes here. Is important to me because, yeah, in my mind, that's the easiest Pyromancer of your life, right? 15 seconds without the support, 30 seconds without the mid laner. You're either invading real deep, you're getting a Pyro, maybe even both, although you don't quite have the time to work with that. So it's surprising to me that they don't all immediately rush over here. Cyno should be able to get it with Moswal's help, and that's the big deal. But yeah, they're just walking past it. In that case, yeah, it was a little bit of fighting for fighting's sake.
Well, they can go
but
back.
You get a couple of kills, you're so far, so good.
Now they're getting more.
And they're getting a little more.
They get 2 greater Scorpions. The rest of the team goes to the tier 1 tower. I thought they were just going to abandon the Pyro.
I did too. I was getting real nervous there. If I'm honest with you.
I think it's because that's what like my teammates always do. They'll fight and then just leave and go back to their lanes and farm. This would be nice for InMyZen to grab a kill. Griff silenced. Griff taken down. And so a small silver lining for the Xibalba Storm core. And you're able to put Griff in the fountain for 40 seconds or so. Pretty lengthy death time.
And honestly, now that I'm thinking more on it and watching how these fights are going, especially with the RelentlessOne and Geno over here, Magicfeet, by the way, taking a surprising amount of damage. But that pathing makes more sense because if you see the people who are going to respawn, Joshy was out for the longest time. And so all of a sudden you're stealing a Scorpion, grabbing your Scorpion, like you're getting more global gold for the Wardens there. And you're not necessarily too stressed about it. I don't think anybody was going to rotate in. So I like the route they took, even if it did make me a little nervous initially. And it's because you get a huge win on right. You get 2 clean kills. Yes, it sucks to lose Griff there, but you still get so much pressure on the map that it feels like a small dent. Technically, Griff is right now behind in experience, so you feel more okay losing him. Again, not the best death for you to have. And with the relics on cooldown for another 100 seconds each, it's going to be a little while before you feel comfortable going into the fight as heavily as Griff does. But it's not stopping him from fighting.
Cyno grabs 1 with the taunt and an epic uppercut from Oceans. Man, Cyno has lived, and on the back line of the fight, Uzzy has eyes for Moswal as the first transformation rolls out. Magicfeet in, uses the Mystic Rush, and took damage in the knockback from Moswal, which I think disengages everything here. Watch out though, Joshy does still have transformation. Could really flip this fight out of nowhere. Geno, I like the idea. Don't love the execution, and all 10 players remain on the map.
I remember that item I was blanking on earlier. and it's because Zen has bought it. So my faith in Zen has been rewarded. It was the Crusher, right?
Yeah.
Another one that lets your abilities hit harder.
We saw so much Crusher this year. How have we forgotten it?
It's easy to blink on. I was so hyper-focused on Heartseeker that it slips through. But it's good stats, good pin, and you're then getting bonus damage. I mean, look how much damage he's doing from the backline. It's so much.
Joshy has transformed into the Cthulhu and now goes big on the front of the fight, but look at the cleave damage out of the Kaolin Wardens that has slowed the Xibalba Storm on their waltz into this fight. As the Oni Fury gets pulled by the Kaolin Wardens. So 5 versus 5, the tug of war of ultimate economy. Back and forth should be the first kill of this fight onto Oceans, and they put him into his passive. Oni Fury gets fully reset. And Griff grabs the kill onto Oceans, but Uzzy dashes in, but he's dashed in alone. And that'll be another one over to the Kaolin Wardens. And suddenly the Xibalba Storm pulling the eject button, and the last 3 will live.
I mean, just the pure damage numbers right now are making themselves work for the Wardens, I think, more than anything. 13, almost 14K, being matched admittedly by Zen, but there for Moswal has been very well placed. You're getting, again, just really good CC to the point where what should be just intrinsically stronger team fights for the Storm are getting picked apart, whether it's because of good taunts or good roots, good pulls, what have you on the side of the Wardens. It's just ripping them into a position where you end up with Uzzy by himself and not able to do anything. You end up with your ult a little staggered so that Joshy and Uzzy can't necessarily disrupt at the same time or one after another. And so the way things are going for the Wardens, I mean, this has been very clean for them.
Yeah.
A couple of moments where they've had, opportunities or kills, I guess, slip through their fingers where it was just like kind of a, oh, well, that's going to happen. But with the builds that are going on, like, I expect a lot of damage from Zen, and he's matching it, but how much more that's going to make a difference if Magicfeet isn't able to get more done. Same thing for Josh.
RelentlessOne wants to fight. RelentlessOne can fight, double knockup, and actually some decent damage from that blue stone. As he sends some knockups towards the Kaolin Wardens, though, as well. And now the rest of the Kaolin Wardens won't be super happy with the prospects of continuing to fight, though maybe they should be. InMyZen is stuck on the left side of the map, and the rest of the Kaolin Wardens are here. If you can find a pick, if you can kind of find a good fight, you might be able to pull the FG here in just a second. Oceans goes down. The Kumbhakarna has just been run at this game. InMyZen has got to use the ultimate, but the pin read from Cyno is perfect. And Magicfeet gives a killing spree to Moswal.
Dave, I'm going to break this one down real fast.
Please do.
The Wardens are just playing better. Look, if Cyno's going to predict everything when you're jumping over the wall, like, it's nothing against the draft, and I know that the Storm are amazing players. But right now, it is just that the Wardens are approaching every fight a little bit better. Whether it's relic usage, where they're predicting a lot of these items abilities to go, things like that, where your escape routes are. All of that is making things, at least an argument for their strength. But I think the other thing that's going for them, and I had mentioned this earlier, Vulcan ult, notoriously difficult to hit. It's been doing a good amount of chunk damage to Uzzy, and I didn't factor in sheer size of Cthulhu to that mix, right? If I'm looking at a Vulcan ult, and you're trying to hit just like a standard hunter, standard mage, even an assassin, they're incredibly small, usually high mobility, they're going to get out of there. Cthulhu has a dash, but if you're getting rid of it, whether it's because of an engage or some forced damage onto Uzzy early on, or in the case that we've seen it the most, Uzzy is in their ult, that's just a huge target for Moswal to burn down. And is it going to be the most insane amount of damage? No, but it's going to chunk them every single time. And as that levels up, as we get closer to 20, as we see a couple more items finished, that becomes even more of a threat towards that Cthulhu. And you're seeing him, start to make the difference. Just a second ago was just 300 damage above InMyZen. Now you're sitting 2,000 plus above InMyZen. So still rising. Plus that amount of burn from people like Cyno. It feels like the Storm at this point, it's too much to handle.
Cyno did need the healing from the 9 turns blessing, though, because InMyZen has reached that point. 5 out of 6 items, well, outside of the starter item upgrade. But shreds down Cyno's health bar. Probably smart from the Storm. You're not going to be able to defend this tier 2 on left. Maybe you slow him down. But ultimately, it really just feels like a losing battle unless you're fighting underneath one of your Phoenixes. The Wardens, in this composition, Gore, just has the ability to play like this, right? I mean, you got a Ratatoskr who can dive on you. There's nothing the Xibalba Storm can do about that other than back away, and the Kaolin Wardens have filled that space, taking objectives time and time again. So it really feels like the Ratatoskr, the Sylvanus, the Erlang Shen have just been able to push this advantage so heavily.
Yeah. I mean, the Erlang's 3 levels up, right? I think earlier it was 4 levels up. So there's been a lot of experience that Cyno's been able to pick up. Magicfeet just hasn't been able to be as part of as many fights. And as such, when the fights have been the losses that they have been for the Storm, you've lost out on a lot of the global gold and experience that is going to help your team out as a whole, but also a lot that as a jungler is going to help you keep up with this. So I think that the Wardens have been doing a great job of denial up against the Storm so far. But it's also, like you said, this engage, this initiation. There are shifting points, though, right? Like, there's still things on the horizon that are going to change the way that a lot of these fights are going. Part of it is Zen. Zen now has a Heartseeker. You know, you had mentioned that shifter shield earlier, but when Magicfeet gets low, he's going to get extra procs. That's going to allow them to theoretically stay in these fights a little bit more. Hydra's Lament, Polynomicon, Sphero, like a big back from the Storm right now in order to finalize some items that are really going to enable better team fights. Then it comes down to experience, and we say this a lot, but you only hit 20 once in a game, so you're hitting the cap. You don't go any further. It's going to be easy to catch up for the Storm. If they can just bunker down and keep the Phoenixes alive, which right now seems like that's going to be a pretty easy task, then the next Fire Giant fight, while it's still a disadvantage for them, Zen opened up a path over there on left. Zen can now join the fight a lot closer, be there for a full 5-on-5 at FG, and actually give the team a better fighting chance.
Unfortunately for the Storm, the Wardens also had a good back goal.
Yeah, they had a really good back.
They were able to fully complete. That was a full buy Executioner for Cyno. So, yeah, you're worried about shredding down a Cthulhu. 2 kin size on 2 people. You want to have it. Health bar going to get worked through just fine. So, I agree, Gore. There are some silver linings for the Storm, but that's what you've got to find when the game is as out of control as this one is. About 9,000 gold behind are the Xibalba Storm, and only a couple team members have reached that level 20 mark. You've got a little breathing room for 45 or so seconds until this next Fire Giant respawns, but another good gold infusion is going to bounce because there's going to be a Pyromancer up at the same time as well. And so this is where team comms have to be on point. The Storm have to be discussing right now, do we step up and defend this FG, or do we like our chances better down an FG but fighting underneath the Phoenix?
I think they got incredibly lucky with that Trebuchet because, you know, 3 towers down, it goes to the strongest lane, quote unquote. Spawns over in left. You get to spawn that Trebuchet, let it go get free pressure in left lane for you while you're pressuring out the FG. Even if this fight goes neutral for the Wardens, they're going to get something elsewhere on the map. And that's neutral area right now, a little less, or a little more inward, southbound, than the line of scrimmage normally is on the map in the dual lane. But other than that, everything's pretty much neutral across the board in the lanes. So this fight has a lot of pressure on it to be successful. And the way they position, I mean, at this point, they're just giving it up.
Yeah, I mean, like that. I guess they might have to. Yeah,
it's a half and half. It's a. If you go.
No,
in
I mean,
there,
I don't disagree. I mean, I want to see a fight because it's just action. You know what I mean? But I guess like with this still being a regular Fire Giant, if it were enhanced, maybe you do have to fight. Maybe their argument is like the difference between fighting an enhanced Fire Giant Wardens versus a regular Fire Giant Wardens versus a non-Fire Giant Wardens. Like maybe you want to do it under your Phoenix. Like maybe they feel more comfortable just with their Phoenix defense. Unsure, but the result is that the Wardens grab themselves the the second Fire Giant of the game rather. A nice double taunt in from Cyno, but no immediate follow-up. That's an epic uppercut from Oceans. Knock up no good, but Magicfeet finishes off the first kill of the fight, and suddenly the Xibalba Storm have found themselves a pick. RelentlessOne dives into the backline, but he has no damage, no help. And the Xibalba Storm Core looking all right underneath their midfield.
Yeah, I mean, that was a defense that was gifted. Cyno is going for the kill on the Phoenix, did not care about health bar. Now RelentlessOne's going to pay for it. No, barely.
Whoa.
Gets out of there. Look at the damage in route.
Oh, no! Masterful shot, got it done. Oh, that is horrible. I didn't see the mark.
Those are the most frustrating deaths in SMITE, I think.
There's nothing you can do, right? I mean, I'm looking at the, yeah. They're like, all right, I'm low, and InMyZen perfectly times it out. grabs the kill into RelentlessOne. In Gore, I think that just about delays this game for another 4 minutes. The mid lane Phoenix is down, yes. There's nothing more the Wardens want to do.
It's a weird balancing point, though, right?
Although, maybe when you get full 5v5.
Well, you've got 20 seconds left for people to come back. 3 still with Fire Giant. You've got the important one. I think Griff having it is incredibly important right now. 2 minutes to work with on the FG buff. Means that you can regroup, start to put some pressure on there. I was actually going to talk about how the Phoenix defense, to me, relies on Uzzy and admittedly Joshy's ult, because that is where they're going to get what would otherwise be a lot of the mage, like, denial of area that you get from a Phoenix. If you have, like, a Merlin, things like that, standard mages, big, wide abilities, usually at least in one of them. And so that gives you the opportunity to pretty easily say, hey, if you're coming into the Phoenix, you got to walk through this, and it's going to damage you, it's going to hurt. They didn't have backdoor protections, though. Cyno goes really deep during that Phoenix, not to get a kill, not to win the fight, but to get the Phoenix itself. And doing so kind of sacrifices himself, right? The team is then in an awkward position. Jungler just dies, have to back up. They run away, they take a couple of casualties. That's not the end of the world for them. I think that right here, they still have the pressure. Admittedly, still need a minion wave to get the backdoor protections down. But with ults coming back online, I think that Cyno is going to be a little more focused on the kills this time, especially with the loop, the path they now have through mid.
Right. Yeah, let the fire minions walk in. RelentlessOne nearly escaped the last fight alive. Just need to see a bit more of that initiation hit its mark this time around. Left side Phoenix going to get chunked through just a bit. Some good poke damage from Griff and Moswal will find its way in. Of course, Moswal can just drop a turret, spawn up a pseudo minion. Nice attempted pull. InMyZen nearly had to use the beads. Otherwise, game over for sure. Magicfeet gets a root onto RelentlessOne, but a 3-2 split. Still a bit of a slow play. The fire minions could make a difference now walking in mid.
I mean, you've got extra pressure there. Oh. That's going to go onto the Titan, but again, Cyno can just walk into the back.
Double beads off of Shen and Joshy. It's a dream scenario from Geno. And RelentlessOne follows up. Aegis times out. And Joshy was just unable to play the game. InMyZen won't make it to Fountain either. And that's a masterclass on initiation between RelentlessOne and Geno. The rest of the Kaolin Wardens kill off the front line elsewhere in the fight, and the Wardens as 4 up against Magicfeet and Ocean's. Gotta be enough damage and tankiness to close out game number 1. And Gore, the Kaolin Wardens, they stumble a bit early in this game, but the team fighting, the onslaught, the damage, just too strong, and the Wardens take game 1.
It is exactly what you say, right? A couple of stutters for them at the very beginning, and then all of a sudden it becomes very clean from that point forward. And a lot of it is around that Gold Fury fight, right? They come into it, they have a 5v4, temporarily made a 5v3 thanks to a Heimdallr ult, and then you're picking up kills. You've got good damage on the Vulcan. It was around that level 12, level 13 mark that I thought their team would hit its full stride, and so they really get to take advantage of that, lean into it, make it look good. But on top of all that, it takes Uzzy so long to rotate in, so they get a kill. Then they get a second one, and then they just start to pick them off because they start trudging in, trying to make that saving play, when eventually there should have been a cutoff. It should have been, cool, we lost 2 people, get out of there. And unfortunately, that led to a Gold Fury, which led to a huge lead, which led to a Pyromancer, which led to another fight, which led to a Gold Fury, and then spirals out of control.
Gore, I'm not sure we saw a single double Cthulhu fight there in that game. Maybe one. Didn't matter. Cthulhu was held behind, and the Kaolin Wardens take game number 1. Xibalba Storm, not a team that tends to give up in scenarios like this. We'll see if they can bounce back in game 2, coming up next. Kaolin Wardens take game number 1. And look, when you look at the Kaolin Wardens roster, this is my soapbox for a minute.
Do it.
Not even for a minute. This is my soapbox for a second. When the Kaolin Wardens as a roster formed, this was the style of game I was for sure that we would be getting like week in and week out. Obviously, you're going to stumble here and there. I thought the Kaolin Wardens were just going to do this to their opponents every single time they loaded into the game. Has happened a lot, and has happened a lot more recently, but took a bit for us to get there. And so I love seeing this style of Wardens game, and I'm sure Wardens fans do as well. Gore, the Xibalba Storm early in game number 1 here had some moments, had some individual kills. There's just a big turnaround in almost one swift fight earlier on in that game, and then just snowballed out of control, and the Warden style of comp just so good at pushing that lead.
And that's the thing, I think that they were able to take those fights and really push them that extra mile for them. The shred that they got on the Erlang, admittedly, some of it was because of the level lead, I think, in the jungle that we got to see, but the damage numbers between them was absolutely insane. And you're getting a lot of this, right? That doesn't seem like a lot of damage up to a Chalk, or sorry, to a Kumbha, but you hit him, and all of a sudden, it's just that much easier to find the kill, right? Vulcan ult being able to be a huge opener for them, but the meatball damage, the backfire damage, a lot that the Vulcan brought to the table, I think. I mean, we called it a Moswal-style pick, and it was that weird balance of current meta versus what Moswal can play well and how good this team can be that were warring in my mind for how successful it would be. And the Moswal half ended up winning out here, as we saw. But the shred that this team had, and we talked about the initiation, I don't think I can get over that, especially at the end. The double beads into an easy knock-up, really good chase down. I mean, it was just so good to separate and cause trouble for the Storm. The Wardens, by the time the fight was going on, they'd burned a lot of relics from the Storm and were able to go in and kind of free fire.
Yeah, I like the way Moswal ended up itemizing earlier on in the game. Remember, Dumore wasn't doing much. And then a lot of burst damage down the pipeline, 24,000 of it, as a matter of fact, for Moswal, Gryph, and RelentlessOne. And RelentlessOne especially, I think, really stands out there because 21,000 damage from full tank Ratatoskr. Was jumping on targets. Bluestone was actually doing a lot in this game. And so I really like the way that the Wardens built out their composition. And you got to play that way with that style of comp. And I think the Wardens did it to a T. Now, that said, what I said just prior to break, the Xibalba Storm, not a team that you frequently will 2-0, if you 2-0 ever, because the Storm are very good at adapting and moving back into sets like this. So, what types of adaptations do the Storm make? Picks and bans for game number 2 will likely let us know. And it's got to be, I think, or centered around slowing down the Kaolin Wardens.
Yes.
And I don't mind the way that the game started for the Storm.
No.
But the moment the going got tough, the Wardens were able to run.
Well, it was one really good fight for the Wardens, right? And like, admittedly, I still think there were some opportunities afterward, but that one really good fight turned into two really good fights very quickly. And we were talking about it to a point where on left, in deep on the jungle, they were around a red buff that wasn't there, a purple buff wasn't there. The tower, what is that? Obelisk. There we go. It was just like it was slowly draining, but it wasn't. It's not something to go in that deep and have your entire team die for. And so that risk was we're gonna go for a deep play. There's no Fury. If we lose over here, it's not a big deal. If we win over here, rush to the other side of the map. Scorpion, Pyro. That's a huge influx of gold, and to the point where that is going to get them pretty far ahead. And so it's two bad fights, but one that really kicks things off for the Storm. Now I want to see them approach it in a way that they have a draft that can maybe be a little more capable. Some of it's just play on field, though, and shot calling, right? The Wardens make really good objective plays. I think that if the Storm approach this one and they are a little more aware of what kind of fights they're going to be seeing from the Wardens, then we could see a much more even first 10 minutes.
Well, we know what we're going to get from the Erlang Shen, right? Yeah. It was a good look for Cyno, always has been a good look for Cyno. And really the 9 turns blessings were really hitting, even if it was only like a taunt or two, they were still on the priority targets. And I have to now retroactively go back and give a shout out to Geno, the double Sylvanus knockup forced the beads off of both Zen and Joshy before the end of game number 1. An amazing moment that likely doesn't change the outcome because the Wardens probably win that anyway. But just made life so much easier. So that style of pick for Geno could potentially be another good look. On the flip side, Gore, going to stick with the Chiron. I think it was one of these shining lights for the Storm in game 1.
That was very good.
And Osiris, whether solo or jungle, able to find its niche in this game.
Yeah, a couple of gods. I'm actually surprised that we haven't seen picked up, even though they were banned so readily in game number 1. Khepri is one that I'm surprised didn't get picked up. The Osiris, though, banned. Not surprised that he gets picked up because you get a lot of flexibility. Even here, is he solo or jungle? I don't know. Good luck, right? Like, he can go either. I really like him in the jungle because of the pressure you can afford. When you're going up against an Erlang, I think that that's very helpful as well. Your tether is going to give you prots. It's going to help force him away from you in some of those fights. You've got good chase down or good disengage if you get taunted in. So in the jungle, he's going to be pretty solid. A lot of those things I just said still work in solo lane, but then you have to shift him to maybe some late game team fights, things like that. And you get that with a Chiron. You had mentioned it, but like for a while there was keeping pace with the Vulcan's damage. Fell behind towards the end, but that was more the Wardens doing well and not necessarily Zen falling behind. And then you really get to see, I think, the culmination. Huang has just been fantastic over the last couple of weeks, and the right team. He's afforded his losses. He's definitely been there for them, but it's never really
Athena.
his fault. He does what he does well, and I expect a very similar game from what we've seen in the past.
Athena does bring a unique twist to the Storm composition. Of course, global pressure, and then also a taunt, not unlike Erlang Shen, but on a lower cooldown. Really quickly, Gore, before we get out of picks and bans, because we're going to have plenty of time to break down these compositions, who do you think has the scarier teeth in their god portraits between a Kumbhakarna, a Khepri, and a Ravana?
Bear your burden.
Between a Kumbhakarna.
Look at the bottom in the bands. Okay. Kumbha's got some scary teeth. Ravana
Khepri
does as well, but Khepri's got sneaky, scary teeth.
Okay, so like, Ravana and Kumbha have fangs going for them, right? And like,
I sense a battle approaching.
That's like spooky, but like I don't know. They're not like scaring me. Khepri's got like human teeth. That freaks me out.
Yeah, he kind of does. I just like,
he's got like people.
And he's a bug, like, you know, like right. That right. It's like grinds you down. You know what I mean? I hate it. Imagine being abducted by that. Couldn't be me. Hell is the mid lane.
Yeah, definitely Khepri. Khepri's just the right answer.
I'm glad you said that because I agree. Gore, we will have some time to break down these compositions as we move our way into game number 2. Time for the Xibalba Storm, down a couple scary sets of teeth, to bounce back against the Kaolin Wardens. And Gore, I do want to start over in the duo lane because I mentioned briefly the Athena pick and how it adds an interesting dynamic for the Storm. But on the flip side, Geno on the Atlas. Atlas upon release was like all the rage for 2 or 3 people that were playing it at the SEC level.
Yeah.
And have not seen it.
I'll go back on that. Atlas upon release was underwhelming. Atlas,
sure.
A few weeks later when he was finally allowed for competitive, he had gotten the buffs then.
There you go.
That's when we got to see. Yeah, so release it in like SEC, SPL. I have to give credit to Heroin. I think Heroin during the SPL play-in tournament this year made a good showcase for what this Atlas can do. A lot of people were picking him up. And I think, again, you've got to look at it as decent, team fight, at least engage on the one that you have, a good dash to get you out of there. Most of the time his ult is nice, right? Prot Shred, but that's what you're going for right there. You've got like a 15-second Fenrir ult, right? It's going to be a little harder for you, but look at the similarities. You've got to walk up to him. It's a small cone in front of you. You pick him up, and you can then hold them for your team. Fenrir holds them a little longer. Atlas can yeet them back into the fires that is the firing squad that is your team. So I think that there's a lot more for that you can be had. I guess in a way it's like an elevated extra taunt, but that's just another weird way to describe it instead of going.
Yeah, there's a way to make that work, or
I like Fenrir. I'm gonna stick with that.
Yeah, and it's a 15-second cooldown, not a 15-second I'm holding you for 15 seconds. Imagine.
That would be wild. Yeah, no, but like Fenrir holds you longer. Atlas throws you to the sharks. So it's
and Atlas has a much shorter cooldown than Fenrir does.
So you get it, and it's just way better. That's what I'm saying. It's just way better than a Fenrir.
Right, once you're able to connect.
In general.
No, just the way it was worded made me think about how long 15 seconds really is in the grand scheme of Smite. And how, man, I wish there was an ability where you could just hold someone for 15 seconds. Wouldn't that be fun for everyone involved?
It's called Cuddle. And realistically, it's just for serotonin.
Yeah, right. That's all it is. Right.
It's actually, it does not do damage. In fact, you both heal from it, but it has to be an enemy.
And you just hang out for a second.
Yeah, and you just...
Tired of fighting? Let's relax for a minute.
Hug it out. Come here.
And it's only picked in the solo lane. Because that's what the solo lane is, unless the junglers make their way to that side of the map. Attempted invade by Geno, and I say attempted because the taunt from Oceans and the damage from Zen was enough to drop the purple buff for the Xibalba Storm. And it is Magicfeet on the Osiris score up against Cyno on the Erlang Shen. I think Osiris versus Erlang Shen is one of the more storied jungle matchups since the warrior jungle meta came upon us over the last couple of years.
To the point where I almost want to look up, because what was it, beginning of Season 8 or was it Season 7 where it was King Arthur and Kaolin? That must have been Season 8. King Arthur and Kaolin were like, what felt like every game you had that matchup, but realistically it was you either had a King Arthur or a Kaolin, and because they both showed up so much, it became like the meme. That's what this feels like to me. Like, I feel like these two match up against each other actually more than what we realistically got to see with a King Arthur and a Kaolin.
Yeah, but who wins the day here? Because Cyno obviously carries a lot of weight on the Erlang Shen, has Blink, neither have Mannequin Scepter, both have Eye of the Jungle. Farm-wise, Cyno able to go back once more. Magicfeet loves this early stick around as long as you can, farm up, maybe get a full complete first item. And then you see some activity from the Osiris.
Yeah, honestly, I think that, the pace that they set last game, I mean, it was level 6 before we saw any games like this, so if Cyno was able to get involved, if it, whether he was spotted, which I do see a ward there, so probably seen a little early on. If you're able to get that game going for you, it probably feels pretty good. The downside is that you spent that time. That gives an advantage over to the Osiris. Magicfeet now gets within 5, strip away some experience and some gold. And Magicfeet, like you said, didn't seem to be big on jumping into the fight, jumping into the fray early on in that last game. It started, but it wasn't necessarily the forefront when I thought it would peak. Now, though, you've got an advantage. You can definitely make it work. Maybe not here because of the numbers, but I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see this Osiris look for more powerful ganks and power plays for the team.
Still has 1,600 gold in hand, so hasn't gone back to purchase the next round of items, anything like that. I can say the same for Uzzy. He's got 2,000. His RelentlessOne goes back and finishes up the Berserker shield. See a lot of Shoguns in this style of build. The attack speed Amaterasu. You can add in for Cyno, oGryph later in the game, something like that. Could feel nice over in the solo lane. Neither of the solo laners grab teleport this time, Gordon. Neither of the solo laners have semi-global utility in the same way that Uzzy did, or RelentlessOne rather did in game number 1. So rotations just gonna have to be matching pressure of one another. But there is some semi-global presence here, Gordon. It is the Athena.
Yeah.
Wonder if Ocean's able to rotate through, assist in some ganks, and help the Storm in odd-numbered fights.
This is what Cherio being in the SBL and like, you know, whether it was playing for the last couple of years or this year coaching for the Dragons has done to my brain. And that's that. Before, so Bellona's the last pick. So their team just said Osiris, Chiron, Huang, and Athena. My brain goes, so they're going to pick another support here.
Yeah.
And it's going to be Athena jungle,
Athena
Osiris solo.
Right.
And we'll figure out what else.
If it were the Wardens, I would have believed, I would have bought into that theory.
And that is I didn't factor in like Magicfeet wanting to do that versus like Cyno versus being able to convince like Sam and the SBL, things like that. I like Athena though. I like she's one of my diamonds that I got very early on. She's a guardian that I've been playing for years and years and years that I just really enjoy. Taunt, in my mind, is still one of the best abilities that you can have in Smite.
Is that really the name of the ability?
I believe it's called Confound.
Oh. Right.
But it's a taunt. So anybody who calls it Confound is confounded about what the ability is. It's a taunt.
Right.
No, through and through. So you know, it's very good for exactly this reason, right? You just guarantee damage. You're pulling someone in. Admittedly, it's gone through buffs and nerfs. Now it has some damage on there that feels good. The downside that Athena has always had is your shield wall, the damage on that is a little bit at the beginning and then a lot when it detonates, so you have to keep people in there. Usually you go 3-2 to try and taunt them in to make sure they're still there if you're looking for damage. That's very stationary, not necessarily that large. Good maybe in the middle of a team fight, but not fantastic. Your dash is like the easiest thing in the world.
Oceans could fall, but no, the mobility of the Athena keeps first blood all up in the air in the first 7.5 minutes of the game. Finally seeing some action erupt. InMyZen uses the beats, so did Oceans. And so some small wins here. They're tower diving the tier 2, that is aggressive. The Kaolin Wardens will leave empty-handed. An ultimate from oGryph actually keeps this rolling, but no, the eject button has been hit, and the Wardens will leave.
Yeah, I think that was one. It was optimistic, right? The rest of the team was already gone. And that ult is like, either it's going to help one of two things. Either you can fight, which I don't think they wanted to, or it's a guaranteed we're out of here. You don't have to worry about anybody following us up or anything like that. So I think oGryph trying to just make sure that the team stays safe in multiple ways, because now you're getting maybe a little bit too aggressive if you're the Wardens. I'm surprised to see him this team.
A 3-man taunt looks great, but the kills drop, they should, and Magicfeet snags first blood onto Geno. And that is a long burn of a first blood. oGryph able to drop his own purple buff, thankfully. But first blood to the Xibalba Storm, bit of a chase down, and an early kill onto the Atlas.
You get it on, yeah, the Osiris feels good, right? You kill off that Atlas, you get your Osiris running, and he was already, well, at least earlier, a little bit ahead. Lost that lead to Cyno, right? Cyno's just been farming better, whether it's splitting up in the proper waves or what have you, invades, things like that. It's just been working out. So you get to catch up a little bit more of your Magicfeet here, get hands-on, and now I want to see them push that, I think, a little further here if you're the Storm. Is get aggressive, maybe not too deep, right? But recognize those moments where you can take those fights and try to find picks. Geno is going to be someone that, once the dash is gone, is going to be pretty easy to lock down. Same thing for someone like an Ama, although the ult definitely has to factor into that. But Moswal's on Hell, so eventually you know you're going to be worried about healing. That's something that you're going to have to factor into it. But right now, you've got all the time in the world, right? Hell healing early on in the game is nice, but it's not like team-defining, changing, or anything like that. And so I think you're in a good position to at least find those individual picks, take on 4v4s, and really get something out of it.
Xibalba Storm stepping up. Ooh, rare miss from Cyno on the 9 turns blessing, but that taunt in from Oceans. The Athena able to match the pressure of Cyno. Centaurus flies in from the Xibalba Storm, and it is chunked down Moswal, and the reinitiation from Uzzy is strong. And now Geno, on the wrong side of this engagement, should hand over another kill to the Storm. It's just a matter of who and when. Looks like Magicfeet defied to bet. Just gonna be annoying. There's this done. The Magicfeet snags a second kill of the game. The Xibalba Storm are finding these individual picks, building up their gold lead casually.
And honestly, it's those moments that are game defining in some of these sets, right? I mean, you can really find one kill that leads to the. I mean, honestly, that's how I would argue the Wardens. Like, it was 2 kills. They start off one really good fight, and that opens up so many opportunities for him. Granted, nothing is powerful from the Storm just yet. No big, like, sweeping fights that have gone in their favor where it's been a lot of people at once that they could then turn into something as easy as a Pyromancer or a little more complex like a Gold Fury, things like that, which early on give you such a good infusion of gold, good boost to the morale in the team with how you're going to be able to play. But I think it's a good start, right? Good kills, really solid picks. The most that the Wardens have been able to do so far is prolong those objectives to make sure that you're not getting too far ahead.
Yeah, right. It was a sudden burst lead from the Wardens in the first game. It's built up to a similar level for the Storm, now just shy of 2,000, but still not quite as all at once. So health limited. Pyromancer pulled by the Kaolin Wardens, but Uzzy, double or triple stun on the other end. A taunt in from Cyno. But this Bellona this early in the game, so strong. The heal from the 9 turns blessing just in time. And that'll get Cyno out. Double Lord of the Afterlife. Again, further pushes out the advantage in the Xibalba Storm. Pick up a kill onto Moswal, second of the game. And why not? You got some low health targets underneath the tier 1 tower. Cyno blinks away. RelentlessOne, relentlessly tower dove, but able to live. And the Xibalba Storm are gonna have to leave.
I'm surprised Cyno though, kind of getting away scot-free, right? Just runs the other way. The team decides to commit to the tower. That doesn't end up being the right call for them. Storm, though, still get a good couple of kills. Now they have a lot of pressure. They can still go for some murders.
Oh, no. Bit of a bait by Geno. RelentlessOne dies. Geno does as well. And murders indeed, Gore. Tier 1 tower drops. And a couple more kills. And that is a big sweeping advantage for the Xibalba Storm.
Look, there's no mystery behind it, right? Like, they just walked in and killed them.
Yeah, right.
It's solved. It's like,
blood.
if you're a detective, this case is I've definitely been saying that a lot. Like I was playing Smite the other night with Katie, and like I'd go in, I'd play in Ymir, I'd throw up a wall and hit a freeze, and be like, all right, do a murder, kill him.
Do a murder.
Like we gotta get it, and do a murder. That's sometimes what you gotta do. Look, they've done 6, and it's been working out really well for them.
And they're gonna poach a poor. What is the Fury? I was gonna say an animal, but does poaching make sense for the Fury? I'm not sure.
It's one of those weird in between beings.
It's a being.
It's a
right?
mythical creature, which might be worse
to
to
some,
poach, right? Because look, all I'm saying is I've never seen any male harpies out there. This might be the only harpy population in Smite that they're eradicating right now. They're like on an extinction event.
Gore, they seem to keep respawning. Every game in and game out. They
it's like
to a guy named like Geralt or something. That might be like something you could poach.
Yeah.
That seems like a name that someone like that would go after. So
here's what I'll say. Although if it follows Percy Jackson lore, they don't die. You're just like gone for a little bit and then you come back to power.
Oceans did just die, unfortunately.
But you know what? Give him a little bit and he'll come back to power.
That's right. So Percy Jackson, I suppose. The first kill of the game to the Kaolin Wardens, and we were so casual about it because it was such a casual kill. The Wardens just kind of walk over to Oceans. Oceans unable to disengage. Is Athena. And it was needed, right? Because you're at 4,000 gold in the lead for the Xibalba Storm at this point. I mean, anything helps. You need a lot more than 1 kill onto an Athena. But at least you got that.
We've got the Furies were creatures, as a quote, so that maybe helps narrow it down. But then when does it become poaching and hunting? What's the difference? Like creatures, animals?
I think
this is also potentially spirits.
I do think that poaching and hunting in real life is like a legality thing.
Oh yeah?
That
sounds about right.
And this is me just throwing stuff out there. Could be
but
totally
I believe
wrong. It would make sense. Oh nice, poaching has been defined as illegal hunting, so I'm smart. Sometimes. This is just one of those times. Anyway.
Chat was going, well, not like tearing into you, but like with the Trebuchet and Catapult comments earlier. I did see a definitive one that all Trebuchets are Catapults, but not all Catapults are Trebuchets.
All right. Well, look, chat. I don't care.
From what I saw, and this is all assuming that the person I saw say this was right, was that Trebuchets use a counterweight. And so they're technically a catapult, but a subset of catapult that uses a counterweight to launch things, as opposed to what you had mentioned, which was one that uses
You know what,
tension.
chat? Here's what I'll say this. I hope to care as much about something as chat cares about trebuchets versus catapults one day, and that's going to be my last thought on that.
Do you not? Do you not have something that you care about a lot?
God, I love Ramsey. She is great. They have a great family. Yeah, all right, fine. I care about them as much as Jack cares about Trebuchets and Catapults. And as much as the Storm cares about running down Geno. Again, so casual, the build-up. We walk up to the Tier 1 tower, we knock it down, and then somebody just stuck around too long. This could be a good dazzling offensive cleanse from Zen, beads from Uzzy, and a taunt through Promotions also forced to cleanse. But Gore, the Storm just overwhelming the Wardens in pressure here in Game 2.
I mean, the way that they're playing this, again, it's just the approach to the fight. You've got so much. You've got good anti-heal from Magicfeet. You've got good engage. Once again, that's going to be a very easy topic of conversation. I think that Geno, when they are able to get in there, can find a pickup. Atlas from behind, though, really starts to feel like you're not getting as much done. You're not tanky enough, not able to grab people the way that your team would want. The Amaterasu, I think, has a lot of, again, good engage capabilities. Same thing for Cyno here, but you're getting burnt down. The itemization changes, or not even changes, just the way that they've gone into it. They've got 2 Toxic Blades on Uzzy and Magicfeet, so each of them are going to be doing anti-heal. That's not even factoring in Magicfeet's ult. They're going for the stationary target. I mean, they've killed off Atlas a ton, but the next highest deaths on the squad for the Wardens has been Moswal, and that's where the focus is. If you get the taunt, then Moswal's not able to cleanse anybody, has to forces out the beads, and then you're able to continue that kind of chase with any extra CC that you have to kill off the hell. Roughly immobile, right? Has some move speed bonus when you heal. That's about it that you're getting from it. And so yeah, you need all you can get to stay alive, and I think the Book of the Dead's a step in the right direction. But I don't know if it's going to be the thing to save you.
Haven't seen much of it. There was a meta where that's all we saw. But the burst shielding toned down just a bit for good reason. You know what? I lied. This is not the last thing I'm going to say about it. Chat was ignoring the fact that I was right. I said trebuchets are better than catapults. And that's the important thing, Gordon. That's the important thing. The Xibalba Storm get a taunt onto Cyno, but they'll force the scurry away. Oceans run down a bit by RelentlessOne. A dash back in by Magicfeet. His ultimates fly, but kills or not. Griff backpedaling away from Uzzy, sends some damage into the Bellona. Geno nearly gets taken down by InMyZen for the first kill of the fight. Somehow everyone from the Storm has lived. Uzzy desperately trying and succeeding as Uzzy on getting the one and only kill of the 5-on-5 team fight.
What we're starting to see, though, look at that investment, right? Not a lot of relics used on the side of the Storm, but a lot of ults to get that. A lot of abilities thrown out there, and then healing just comes through. Oh my god, but Griff gets deleted.
Joshy's got the damage over the wall as he sticks around in the fight. Cyno could get the second kill of the game. Sure does for the Wardens. But another one, this is an individual one-for-one trade. Stone advantage to the Xibalba Storm. Beads used by the Erlang Shen. And the trebuchet with that beautiful counterweight, swinging some rocks towards the Tier 2 tower and the rest of the Kaolin Wardens. And that is obnoxious in what an Athena brings, where a taunt can force just a beast and a cleanse. It really feels like on cooldown. Double stun, though, from the dazzling offensive. It's a great look for RelentlessOne, but hasn't baited in the rest of the Xibalba Storm.
I mean, that was the balancing point. We'll hold on to that thought, though. They get aggressive.
We are still fighting.
Deep. Look at Zen, though. Again, the damage, I wouldn't even say is at its full capacity just yet. But I like what we're seeing out of Zen. Second on the damage charts. It is definitely going to be a playmaker. But that was the duality of Athena. Because like you said, at any given time, one well-placed taunt is going to force beads, going to force a cleanse from the hell, make things really awkward for the Wardens. Also at any given time, Athena can just get killed. The ult takes forever to channel to get away, so if you're trying to use that as a disengage, doesn't work well. I'd mentioned it earlier, but not only can your dash be interrupted, as in like body blocked when you're in the middle of it, but channeling your dash can get interrupted. And so there's a lot of ways to just make sure she stays put and can't get him.
Oni Fury confirmed by the Xibalba Storm. I like what I saw from the Storm at the beginning of that. It was an ult in from Oceans and forced Griff just to ult out of the fight. Griff keeps the beads but loses the ult, so some kill pressure drops. RelentlessOne in behind the Storm a bit. This isn't going to be a sneaky disengage, but tanky enough. You can just kind of walk through the ranks of the Storm and get out alive. Enough pressure on the Joshy keeps Huang back a bit. Huang has gone Book of Thoth, Divine Ruin, Obsidian Shard, and just full bot a Soul Reaver. Kaolin Wardens are in for a world of hurt if they fight here in the next couple of minutes, which they might have to. The Taunt from Oceans connects. RelentlessOne into the back line on the silence. And now backpedaling away from InMyZen. Centaurus already used Uzzy low. But Uzzy will live, and now it's time for Oceans and Magicfeet on the front line of the fight to live. Unable to do so, a big stun down from Uzzy, with the health bars of the Xibalba Storm dwindling, and the Kaolin Wardens pick up another.
I mean, look, I like where Joshy's mind was at. Almost goes in, could have, and maybe should have gone in to try and kill off Cyno and RelentlessOne. Might not have worked out that way though, right? Any small turnaround, and suddenly you're just feeding, and instead of keeping things going for him. But the damage when Joshy joined changes things there in favor of the Storm. The reason that fight doesn't go their way though is it's a 4v5, right? They start up the Pyromancer, they're willing to risk things off, but as you're calling it out, Joshy's running back from the base as fast as he can. He's like, I got the Polynomicon. That's where I'm gonna catch up. And there's only so much distance you can cover at a time, especially without a Pyromancer.
Ow.
And then you see this, I mean, Cyno's still shredding people. Maybe not as quickly, maybe not as far ahead as they were last game. But you gotta be careful with your positioning against the squad.
Joshy desperately trying to disengage. B's egg is used. Gets a little damage out at the end of it, but suddenly, Gore, the Kaolin Wardens finding their footing here in game 2. Healing, spreading out, being impactful. I mean, you still got a tough hill to climb. 4,000 gold for these individual kills. Make life a lot easier. Oceans not pulled in, is able to dash away, but Uzzy suddenly in the back line. Does have Eagle's Rally, watch out for that. If the Kaolin Wardens group up too heavily, a massive opportunity for Uzzy to find an engage.
I mean, the gold at this point, right, like you said, very much still in favor of the Storm. Itemization's going to be in favor of the Storm. Full 5-on-5 should be. But again, that was another instance where they get caught out a little bit. Mispositioning, one person gets poked back, and then it's easy to swarm Joshy, and then it's easy to swarm the rest of them because they kill off Joshy, things like that. And now you get to chip away at it, right? Experience, I mentioned it, but you can take that down and usually catch up. You're 2 levels down in mid, but for the most part, everybody's either on parity. Some people are ahead if they're the Wardens. And so the farm game, the experience game hasn't been the issue. It has been the getting the 5-on-5 fights that the Storm need over the last couple of minutes. But if you're the Wardens here, you're hitting a stride, right? Late game hell, so you're about to have really good healing that you know is going to work out pretty well. Yes, there's a Divine Ruin, 2 Toxic Blades, a Cursed Dog. There's a lot going against you on the other side. Oh, and I didn't even notice it, but the Brawler's down there for Zen.
Yeah.
So everybody's got something to deal with here.
Yeah, a little something. And after that, Brawlers will hit. Centaurus able to apply that pretty effectively. And
You just blast Centaurus, then reset it in a second or two with a masterful shot.
A masterful shot. Not bad for the Xibalba Storm. You are starting to approach what seems like one big changing team fight territory. This 3 members of the Kaolin Wardens kind of grouped up with everyone on the Xibalba Storm as the backline will join the fight. Uzzy run down by oGryph. Centaurus waiting for the masterful shot, if it's even there, maybe already used, so everyone from the Kaolin Wardens able to live. oGryph has to Bifrost away. Again, another individual pick from the Kaolin Wardens puts the Storm in odd-numbered situations.
This is where Hell Healing is going to come in handy, though. Look how much pressure, like the Storm, you lose one, you get some. Stand together, there's some healing. Stand together, there's some healing. And now you're at a 5-on-5 at a Fire Giant with an advantage because you've got more people to work with. And so this one should be easy to start up for them if they so please. Secure is a different conversation, right? Hell doesn't necessarily have anything great, neither do the Storm, so this is going to be toss-up.
Yeah, 5v4 for the Kaolin Wardens. Magicfeet backpedaled away. Cyno taunted in by Oceans, but doesn't result in anything. There's your masterful shot. But looks like enough burst damage from the Xibalba Storm to tell the Wardens that this is not their fight to take. And they'll end up leaving the FG pit. Now give time for Uzzy to get back and respawn. And Gore, these, it's 1 kill here and there.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll add up. But again, the Storm with a pretty big advantage going into this next fight.
And you know what? I think the Storm could have pushed that advantage. Great, like, again, we have the top-down view. We see everything. If they had some deep wards on the Storm and they catch a lot of those backs and disengages from the Wardens, That might be one of the easiest moments that I'd ever walk up to a fire giant. Granted, you would be caught out. There's a sentry nearby. Things that you need to be, I think, a little bit more worried about in terms of vision, where you're walking, things like that. So maybe it would have just been an easy time to walk forward, clear out that vision, get some ward coverage that's just going to give you intrinsic control of the fire giant pit. But I think that they're in a good spot to force the Wardens into an awkward position. Like you said, not only the lead, but even the dissection of the team, right? The Wardens are all over the place.
Ocean slowed on the front line of this fight. There's your pull-in, forces the beads. Geno will walk forward with the rest of the team. Eagles rally down from Uzzy. But the Xibalba Storm, they're leaving this scenario again. Gore, as of late, it feels like the Wardens are the ones asking the questions. And right now the question is, how far will you back up? And the Xibalba Storm answer, a decent amount, because Oceans is dying off as the Kaolin Wardens again find an individual pick. But again, the Xibalba Storm just healthy enough, just enough damage to keep the Kaolin Wardens from pulling the Fire Giant. Or the Storm they have mashed eject the moment the Wardens have stepped forward, and they keep losing Oceans, they keep losing their front line, and it's made a big difference.
I mean, again, it's been easy poke onto an Athena to make sure that they can't have as big an impact as we saw earlier with the taunts and the dashes, everything that an Athena can bring. You're getting good impact from the Hell. I mean, damage there from Moswal was pretty solid, but you're not necessarily locking her in for that. You're locking in for the healing. But the biggest one, and I didn't even factor this in, but Atlas having that aura around his dash, not something that really comes up too often, but in the way that they're grouping, kind of deathballing here as the Wardens, that's giving everybody that disengage that otherwise would be a little more difficult, I think, to achieve. And everyone else, I mean, they all have some dash in one form or another. They have a way out. So the Wardens have just been playing very safe. Like you said, go in, get a kill, get out. Almost like they're like doing spec ops missions, right? They've got a target, they knew who their target's going to be, they go in, they execute, they disengage with no other casualties. Granted, most of that isn't necessarily their choice. They'd probably take the other casualties if they can get it. But it feels very precise, and it's going to get more difficult here. I think the Storm have a good lead, but again, vision control's going over towards the Wardens. These team fights are starting to skew that way. Most of the advantages that we saw earlier were in gold, still exists.
Yeah,
Experience,
much less in gold.
Yeah, I was going to say not so much. Everything's balanced out here for the Wardens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the lead's still there, but it was 4K, now it's 1.5K, you know, I think the Wardens are suddenly feeling a bit more confident in their ability to just step forward. They've got some chin size, they'll shred through the tanks. Still the initiation potential from the Xibalba Storm, and it's moments like that where Uzzy sends an Eagles rally up and over, but Uzzy is just run down, gunned down by the backline. The initiation has been one layer deep. It has not found the backline. That taunt, however, has, as Griff walks too far forward. This is the best looking fight we've seen from the Xibalba Storm. Now Oceans can reposition and look for the taunt back in. RelentlessOne stays alive, but Magicfeet has some autos for him. Double kill from the Osiris. Cyno left running. Could be 3 if Cyno is left slowed and Magicfeet gets his cooldowns back. And the Xibalba Storm Gore all but deicide the Kaolin Wardens out of nowhere.
I mean, it's just a good play. Griff very far up and eats a lot of damage. You know where that damage comes from? None other than InMyZen. Look, if you're going to look at what that Chiron's able to do, again, deep shots, connects, there's a reason they're top of the player damage. That makes things so much easier for their team. I mean, the minute that fight technically starts for the Storm, Griff is almost dead. You know, RelentlessOne, Cyno, Geno, Moswal, they're all running away because they've taken too much. That was brilliant turnaround from the Storm.
Cyno last alive and watch the Titans go down. Cyno was undying, but won't end the game undying. 3-1-5, officially a deicide for the Xibalba Storm. Gore, I was fully convinced in my brain that the Wardens were going to win that Fire Giant fight, win the game, because think about the last like 6 initiations. It was all Wardens, and the Storm were backpedaling. Yeah. Finally, the Storm initiate. And all of the backline from the Wardens are chilling just fine. It's an overextension that makes such a big difference, and the Storm are able to grab themselves the game.
An overextension into a character that has a taunt. I mean, sometimes it is just that simple, right? It's like you took one step too close, they pull you in even further. And again, the damage there from Zen on that Chiron. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if I'm looking at it, the Ratatoskr, not as big a problem. Chernobog, maybe even let that through Raven. Probably easier to deal with. I think if you are looking to deal with someone, it should be that Chiron. I just named Bans from the Storm, so probably none of those 3 that I just thought about. The others, like the Freya, the Ardio, the Emoja on the other side. One of them has to be a little more manageable than what this Chiron's been dealing.
You would think. And the score has been evened 3 sets and 3 game 3s. That all makes sense. You don't want to miss it. Wardens versus Storm, game number 3, coming up next. Because in game number 2, the Xibalba Storm able to right the ship and right what was a dwindling gold lead and grab themselves really one team fight win at the end of the game there that turns things around. Now that's ignoring the massive build-up, the individual picks, the objectives that the Storm were able to amass for that gold lead. But things simplified, and one team fight around the FG ends up ending the game and grabbing the Xibalba Storm a game 2 win and pushes us here to a game number 3. Now, Gormizer, the Kaolin Wardens were able to weather the storm. Nice. And actually kept things very interesting. I would argue we're playing with more momentum going into that, what would have been early Fire Giant call. But the Storm, I think it's just that one fight, right, where you don't lose a pick, and then you turn it around on the Wardens, and you get enough kills that it ends the game.
That might be the best case for positioning matters than anything else. Like, if watching that fight back, a lot of it, like, you could just, even just top down, like, watch the minimap, one step too far forward into an Athena with taunt, you're going to die. With that amount of damage, with Joshy on this Huang, how hard we saw that was hitting, with Xin hitting as hard as they were on this Chiron, that is just going to be an easy combination for them. I genuinely think that we're looking at potentially a Warden 2-0 if they kept fighting a little more on terms, or if things hadn't gotten out of hand. But I'm waiting, when we'll see the time jump, first off, the amount of balance that I think the Wardens were able to really display throughout all of that, which was keeping things back in their favor. But Zin's pressure in that big turnaround fight towards the end was just a huge, huge deal for them. And a lot of it was on to Griff. I mean, you'll see it in this replay, but like Griff, first one dead, right? If Griff is the first one to die, then a lot of the game really did just disappear for the rest of the Wardens, because the damage disappeared. It was harder for the engage to happen. Cyno is off on the other side of the planet trying to run for their lives, things like that just, unfortunately, were never going to work out.
Really, really strong look for the Xibalba Storm here in this game. Magicfeet, a comeback performance, because you think back to game one, Magicfeet was just not standing up to the task. Cyno ran over things, and Cyno actually had a pretty good game here on the Erlang Shen. Only died underneath the Titan when he was the last one alive, so all things considered, an undying game for Cyno, except for the last one there. But you got to look at mid and ADC damage number score, 34,000 and 37,000 for Joshy and InMyZen. No one else in this game is even close. Griff gets 22,000, which is doubling up everyone on his team. There was simply just not enough damage. Yes, there was some healing from Moswal, 18,000 of it. Some more affected damage if you want to look at it like that. But it felt overwhelming in the poke department between a Chiron and a Huang. You backpedal, you deal some poke damage, and you win the fight.
Yeah, I think that they just had too much, too overwhelming, 37, 34K, versus Geno able to get in there. Again, a lot of people wanted to be in the face, right? If you look at Geno, you look at Cyno, and you look at the Amaterasu, all three of them want to get aggressive against you, get deep against you, and they just ate that alive. I mean, the amount of damage, plus the amount of pin that you get in this Chiron build right now is just a lot to deal with in the late game.
Right.
And I love the way we've been seeing. I mean, the Titans did it this past weekend. You're getting to see it here from the Storm. I think in both games, although most notably in that second one, a lot more prevalence from just kick the fight off with a Centaurus, see where that masterful shot goes. You get a Brawler's beat stick proc, no problem, and then you're about to just go chunk anybody you run into.
Goy, you want to do it again?
Sure,
let's do it again.
One more.
Game number 3,
Uno
Picks
mas.
and Bans. Uno mas, one more. Game number 3, Picks and Bans, going to kick off right now. And we've seen Bans remain pretty similar from game 1 to game 2. Might be time to adjust some stuff. Maybe you're a bit worried about Cyno's or Erlang Shen at this point, even in a losing affair. Cyno puts up a very strong performance. Ratatoskr, there's an adjustment for you, as the Wardens won't get to snag their Ratatoskr solo again. Freya, I think probably smart, specifically against the Storm, I guess. I mean, look at the SEC bans in North America. Freya nowhere up there. But something about this Storm team, something about InMyZen on the Freya just carries extra weight, and the Wardens don't want to have to deal with it.
Yeah, this is honestly, I think it's just the aggression, right, that probably comes through in my mind, which is just the amount that they were able to get into the back line, the consistency of the rotations in game number 1, the consistency of rotations that a Chernok can bring, all of that is what these two are. It's just, you know what, we've got to keep you a little more under control. We've got to make sure that you can't get away from us. And so we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that you have to stay at least somewhat consistent, right? I think in game 1, you look at it, Uzzy was just not able to match the Ratatoskr. And so this is very much just a controlling set of bans.
Still remains somewhat similar to what we saw, just kind of blanket early pre-game 1 bans. The real big change is the Ratatoskr that ends up getting taken away. Osiris back though, and it was a great look for Magicfeet in game number 2. Really solid jungler performance. The Lord of the Afterlives were hitting, and late enough into the game, all of that damage was able to shred down targets. The auto attack style of build, really good look for the Xibalba Storm. And we're going to get another jungle matchup between Erlang Shen and Osiris. Now, this game took a bit longer to get going, took Cyno a bit longer to get going. Mid-game was when the Erlang Shen finally hit its mark. But you don't expect that to be the case every single time. Erlang Shen, Heimdallr, Osiris, Chiron. Wonder if these teams feeling like individual moments made the big difference and not so much team comp-wise. And it's the Wardens that have to decide that, right? They lost the game. Do you feel like you can run it back?
And, well, I think you were also in a position you lost the game, but what'd you lose the game to, right? It was play on field, right? I don't think that draft lost them anything. I think it was very much we walked forward into an Athena in the jungle with a guy that hits really hard and wide fat abilities in a small area. Like, we gave up so much to the Storm there that were the Storm playing capably? Absolutely. Did the Wardens need to assault it the way they did? Griff was way further forward than I think anybody else on the team, took a lot of the initial poke, and so that's where things, I think, crumble for them. Here, I like that they're going back to it, right? You get the Sylvanus back from game number 1 that worked, I think, really well for you.
Yep.
You're back into the position. This is actually really weird because normally I see it the other way. Typically first pick, like if you ever have a set where like everybody on one side wins, it's typically the left side. So far it's been second pick, right? Wardens from second pick, then the Storm from second pick. Now the Wardens are back there, so they're feeling comfortable over here.
As Merlin ends up getting taken away. All right, so a bit unique, but Merlin later on in the game still scales up nicely. It's about as mage gets, is what I always say. Talk about unique. Chalk is it here as of late. Have seen it a little bit at the SPL level. Have seen it once here in the North American SEC, but for one win. And so if you put that Chalk over in solo lane core, I think it brings a new dynamic to your team fight, particularly the ultimate. So disruptive, great at forcing beads, puts a little healing in your back pocket. And when you've got some with Erlang Shen, the Sylvanus, I don't mind this Chalk pick.
Honestly, I really like it, right? Because he's got decent damage, but like you said, I'm looking at team fights. I see a knock-up that goes into a silence. None of those like changes to the CC that they announced yesterday are going to be in the game just yet, so like things like that. Admittedly, while you're not maybe going to get the most bang for your buck, because if DR is still going to be nice in the middle of these team fights, lots of good damage on top of that.
Whoa.
Plus, that again gives easy setup for a taunt from an Erlang Shen, or in certain circumstances, you're going to have a lot of easy free damage from a Heimdallr. Plus a Morrigan Le Fay, which I'm going to be honest, took me a second to like reconsider what her kit did because it's been so long since she's been around.
Gore, I forgot Morrigan Le Fay was in the game. We have not seen Morrigan Le Fay in so long once here in the North American SEC.
So if you want to go back to,
with,
what was it, Mike's tweet?
0 wins. Well, Gore, we can go back and look at Mike's tweet in game number 3 here between the Kaolin Wardens and the Xibalba Storm. Was it Mike, like Polar Bear Mike?
Polar Bear Mike.
What did Polar Bear Mike tweet, Gore?
When the conversation came into being about most quote-unquote forgettable gods in SMITE, gods and goddesses in SMITE. And I can't remember who was on that list. I think Crit Rat was on that list. Or maybe it was Overlooked. I can't remember. But I would argue that Morrigan Le Fay is very easily forgotten. I forgot that she existed in the game as well. And not even from any bad merits of her own. It's just that she hasn't really seen a lot of play since she was first introduced. A lot of really interesting moments last year, but like she was just a mage, right? Like if I'm looking at Morrigan Le Fay, I'm not looking at someone who I think is going to be the absolute like hammer that drives the team home. You're just playing the role. You're going to do good damage. You're going to set things up. I expect Moswal is going to be capable of making this pick look incredibly good. Because that's just what Moswal does. There's a reason he's a world champion in MVP. But I think that there is something to be said that she is just, very similarly to the Vulcan in Game 1. Kind of thrown into the back line, not really the one that you're going to be thinking of when I'm thinking of the top meta gods.
Yeah, probably doesn't mind it, though. Joshy and Moswal may have similar styles of game over the course of this game, especially moving into the later portions. Cyno pretty far forward. Remember, it's the level like 1 through 3 you got to worry about with this Huang. Maybe a bit with Morrigan Le Fay as well. So maybe there are a bunch of similarities between the two. I did notice that there was a heavy bit of pressure building up for Geno and Griff over on the left side of the map. That's no surprise, Gore. It feels like the Sylvanus great at creating moments in the laning phase.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more moments like that, especially with the pulls that we saw in game number 1, right? I think there's a lot of open opportunity for the Wardens to get the pressure that they need. It's opening up the conversation, though, for the junglers, right? Each time I've looked at them, I've said, like, oh, yeah, early game, let's get fighting. They've waited till, like, level 6 before showing up to any of the lanes, which, again, is, I think, a little bit in hand with what we expect after some of the balance changes to health bars and things like that. But, like, you can fight. Yeah, you can do what you want. You're an Erlang Shen. You got a pin. Go for it. You're an Osiris. You've got masterful slows that are going to keep people locked down. It's just about whether or not they think they can truly go for the engage or not.
Right. And so again, Gore, it breaks down to an Erlang Shen and an Osiris in the jungle as far as dictating a lot of the pace of this early game. Yes, you'll have pressure in duo. Yes, you know, mid is going to hang out and farm up. So, I mean, it really ends up lying on the junglers. Where do we see that pressure placed? Right now, Magicfeet going to assist Uzzy on the blue buff invade. Whereas Ocean's hoping to secure their own purple buff, unable to do so, and Griff and Geno will pick that up. But if you think back to the pace of Game 1 Core, I mean, it was very slow for Cyno, actually not super speedy for Magicfeet either. That game eventually picked up, but between an Osiris and an Erlang Shen, you might think in the first 5, 6, 7 levels we've seen a gank or two, but that was simply not the case. Though, Cyno invading speed buff, and will get it, and sneaky right on time.
Honestly, I like, again, the pressure that they're able to put on Cyno. A little bit of experience, a little bit of gold, but whole world of hurt losing your speed buff. If I'm gonna just being
emotional
honest.
Hurt.
Well, not even emotional hurt. Like the amount of presence Cyno is able to have with a speed buff compared to Magicfeet without. Even if it's not in ganks, even if it's just camp to camp to camp to camp to camp, your uptime farming is going to be higher. And so in theory, this should amass way more experience over time. And you only have a couple minutes where you're going to have this buff that isn't on the other side, but that's still, I think, a huge step that Magicfeet is going to have to figure out how to overcome a little bit later.
Yep. Magicfeet did figure that out in game number 2. The exact same matchup. Just power farm, bought some time, and eventually was able to capitalize and have a relatively big impact over on game number 2. Nice little pull. Gets the beads off of InMyZen. And so that could really, moments like that could tell Cyno, all right, Zen doesn't have beads, neither does Oceans. Of course, Whirlwind of Rage and Steel with the CC immunity changes things, but Cyno, come over here, send a blink Zen's way, at least burn a cleanse, see what we can get. Always difficult, though, when your dual lane has kept the other dual lane kind of pushed up underneath their tier 1.
Yeah, when you have too much pressure, right? It's suffering from success, the DJ Kaolin story, right?
As far as kills go, right?
You're just like, man, we can't get more because we're doing so well already. Unfortunately for them, that does limit maybe potential for gold, maybe even invades because you're not getting the kills to open things up. But what we've seen in the past, whether it's the Wardens or the Storm in certain circumstances, but since we're focusing on the Wardens, focus on them. It does mean that when you pull the aggression like they have in the left side jungle around the Furies, it gives you that opportunity to leverage into a Fury right afterward. And I was actually looking at it, and I posted this earlier on Twitter, but last night, kind of obnoxiously at 1 in the morning, I was updating my milestone notes for my SBL spreadsheet, and I don't have a problem, you do. One of the things I was looking at
Don't ask what I was doing at 1 in the morning, Gore.
Amount of gold Furies and Fire Giants that had been picked up. Yeah? Yes, I was just gonna gloss over it, but then you head in hands.
Well, I think it's important now that I was hoping you would ask me, because
okay.
now everyone's
you
imagination.
told me not to. Well, yeah, so what
well, I have to finish the bit, or else everyone's imagination is filling in the blanks, Gore.
Well, I filled in the blank real fast.
I know, and I hate it, Gore. No, I can't, because they're fighting. Everyone just gets to imagine, and it's horrible. Cyno gets sent off to the side. Oceans, a fear out of Moswal, means a disengage, and a 2 versus 1 on left means no kill. And you know what, Gore? I'm sold on this bit. I'm ignoring it. What were you doing at 1 in the morning? You're updating your milestone sheet?
No, I was comparing the amount of gold Furies killed in Phase 2 in the SPL versus Phase 1 and Fire Giants. And so Fire Giants were only... Yeah, it's wild.
At 1 in the morning, I was comparing the number of Fire Giants. Go ahead.
Well, we were having look. There was a whole existential crisis that happened prior because.
Okay, that's what I was doing at 1 in the morning, so we got there anyway. Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, because we were playing Raft.
Yeah.
And then we found out
that
the game has an end.
No.
And we beat the game, and we were like, "What do we do? We want to play more, but there's no point anymore. We don't have it going anywhere." And so afterward, it was 3 hours of existential. So I just started playing on my spreadsheet, and I found that Gold Furies. So after the 9-5 changes, early game objectives. It's Gold Furies that shifted, but Fire Giants stayed about the same, right? So the late game, in terms of what we expect, and this is what the design was meant to do, right? Was make the late game stay the same and let the early game be a little more free flowy, not so deadly. But it does mean that if you can get a good early advantage here and get that early gold, that's a huge advantage.
Moswal has to use the ultimate, stuns everywhere, but kills nowhere. And the self-peel from Moswal, that is unbelievable. Keeps the Morrigan Le Fay alive. Centaurus hoping to nab the first kill of the game onto Geno, and Joshy's the one who's got it. Could have been a lot worse. Could have been a kill on a Cyno. Could have been a kill on a Moswal as well. But just the one, and the Xibalba Storm get first blood.
I mean, I like, again, the amount of pressure that they're able to exude. Kind of surprising, but after the way the lanes have been going, you're going to get a little overzealous, I think, if you're the Wardens and take a couple steps too far forward. Is it always going to be something as dramatic as a kill? Probably not, but moments like that open things up. It does kind of harken back to game number 2, which is that when you are getting some of these early fights, what are you able to get afterward, right? I mean, we joke about it a lot and maybe meme it a little bit over the community over the years, but like there is a certain extent where you want a little more than that, right? You want to be able to open it up. Game 1, after a huge fight between the Wardens and the Storm, Wardens are able to get a Gold Fury afterward, plus 4 kills. A single kill, maybe you get a couple invades, maybe you get a little bit of experience in your favor, but being able to open that and spread things further, I think, for the Storm is where they'd like to be. They want a bigger lead than Game 2, because while it was a win, I think they were uncomfortably close by the last fight.
Do wonder if the Storm, though, that said, have been able to say, all right, guys, here's why this game nearly slipped away from us. Things like that can change when your comp is so similar. Though not having the taunt core is admittedly a pretty big change, even though the rest of the team is the same. Not having the Athena taunt potentially changes that game-ending team fight. There's things that look different, for sure, with just the one pick change.
Yeah.
The Storm are able to play a bit better on their poke damage. Maybe those later on fights help out, but now Moswal is able to kind of smooth that over with the Morrigan Le Fay. It's going to be a pretty dynamic game, and so 1 kill, great start for the Storm. Ultimately, won't affect too much as that 500 gold is the bounty is shrank back up to essentially nothing here. But on the flip side, there have been some big changes for the Wardens as well, notably Geno off the Atlas and RelentlessOne onto this Chalk core. I think there are some questions Chalk has to answer as well as this game goes on.
Yeah, so far it's going to be, to me, maybe the question of aggression, of engage, rotations, and that's going to be a big one. With the fighting, the amount of fighting that's been on right side, rotations might not even be in the mix.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. When did that shift? Was it 9-5? Because think back to when solo lane truly was an island.
In this set, it was game 2.
Right, game 2. No, I just mean shifted away from left, like.
Yeah, I would say 9-5 because like Gold Fury got harder to kill. It's that Pyromancer at 10 minutes is the easiest thing to kill on the map if you win a fight and it gives you a good advantage. Right. And so, if you go left, you could 5-stack Gold Fury and I'll walk away with potentially less than half health, or at least 3 of you less than half health. You can run up to the Pyromancer and beat him up and take his lunch money like it's nothing with like 3 people.
Poor guy. Sounds like that sounds like poaching. Just kidding. We're not getting back into that. Yeah, it's just such an interesting dynamic shift where for the longest time solo lane was an island, and it still is in many games, right? Especially slower paced games like this, 1 kill in 11 minutes. But because every lane is an island in this game. But it really truly feels like duo with supports rotating out, and I think to your point, Gore, with Gold Fury being harder to kill, we've seen more solo lane pressure than duo lane pressure as of late.
Yeah.
That's just a feeling, and I don't have statistics to balance that out, but just the way the games have flowed has felt more right-sided. Reasons like this, Pyromancer, this one not stolen away by RelentlessOne, but there is an initiation from the Chalk on the back end. Beads have to get used by Uzzy. Eagles rally down as well, and some disengage from Joshy helps Uzzy. A fadeaway axe from RelentlessOne, maybe, but no. It's Pyromancer to the Storm and no kills for the Wardens.
I mean, that's maybe the best case scenario.
Nope, they're good
for the Storm. Well, that one's like the least impactful.
That's
like
the
worst person to find it and the worst person to get with the delay is like, not only am I not going to kill you, I don't have any damage. So this is just to be annoying. But you get good gold, not a ton. In fact, you're still technically behind if you look at the farm. but I like the presence just because of how big a deal that is. The biggest difference I'm noticing right now is 2 levels deep in the jungle, right? Magicfeet has a little bit of work to do to play catch-up there. Otherwise, everybody either on parity, some people technically slightly ahead.
Centaurus, did they even? They did, okay. There was enough damage to get the kill onto InMyZen. And so 1 kill over to the Kaolin Wardens. And that is a simple kill. You rotate over, tower dive, and snag 1. So right as we're talking about there being very limited dual lane pressure, the Kaolin Wardens decide to send everyone underneath the tier 1 tower. And that's a good look. I mean, look, keeping Zen behind, a great game strategy for the Wardens moving forward.
Yeah, I think that this is going to be, like you said, probably, I mean, this is standard in Game 3s, right? You go into it a little slower pace, you're a little more methodical, a little more careful. This is a heavy investment. I mean, they might, with Cyno, have the damage to get this kill,
nice
especially with the
taunt.
taunt.
Yeah, taunt cancels out, and Cyno grabs it, and suddenly the Kaolin Wardens have a little bit of life here in Game 2. Things had really delayed, and gold means the most maybe at this point in the game, but is the most even, whereas experience, 3.5k, where is that? 2 levels in the jungle, now back down to 1 level in support. God, that's all in the jungle. I guess like half a level over in solo now that RelentlessOne has been able to farm up. So on the right side of the map, and notably it's Cyno with 2 levels over Magicfeet. Probably the strongest player on the map right now, level 13. Feels like, as far as jungles go, feels like Cyno is the one who can really dictate things. Hopefully keep this pace going for the Kaolin Wardens.
I mean, you're in a good spot. You admittedly you would maybe like to keep things a little more in your favor. Cyno is going to take a little bit of poke. With the Pyromancer, well, still, what, 2 minutes out?
Yeah.
You're going to have to be careful with that one. That's where I think a lot of this pressure is going to be exuded, is being able to find the right moments of opportunity for them, right? Keeping this pace in terms of fights, bettering the pace in terms of neutral objectives for the Wardens. And a lot of it's going to come down to team play, right? I'm still curious about this Morrigan Le Fay. Not a lot of damage on the board. Admittedly, not like it's being met by much on the other side. Joshy and Moswal have not had an opportunity to really get into the fray and fight. But watching the Morrigan Le Fay, Warlock Staff, Divine Ruin, where this goes build-wise, where this goes play-wise. You know, Mifflin for a while there was talking about unreactable CC with this pick, very hard to gank. She's got good damage again, but she does mage things. So we'll see whether or not that makes a huge difference for this team. Cyno is like the easiest person to keep your eyes on in this. Not only did he have a lead earlier, which has been dented, but still is in his favor. But that shred, I mean, that shred is just wild to me in terms of what we've been seeing. We might get to see it here.
Gold Fury pulled by all 5 members of the Kaolin Wardens, and it's low. Are they going to reset it? Oceans with the ultimate into the back line of the Kaolin Wardens. Gold Fury not fully reset, but it is now. Double knockup from Geno. As Uzzy and Oceans low on the front line of this fight, and Griff recasting from the left. Griff just needs a few more auto attacks to help clean up one of these kills, but Uzzy will live, Magicfeet will as well.
Give me strength.
I think the Kaolin Warden's healthy enough to give the Gold Fury another go.
I like that. Again, pull him into the fight, force him away. Even if you don't get any kills, ideally you get some, but not picking him up isn't the end of the world. You have to be careful around some of the Gold Furies, again, because of secure conversations like that we don't like to have. But you get in there, you get the fight, you force them out, TKO a few players. Zen is the only one able to hang around, but Ult is down, Aegis is down, or sorry, Shell is down. So it doesn't feel great to try and engage there unless you can do it from afar. And the Wardens just take the objective. If they, again, ideally get a couple of kills, but now there's nothing to fight over on the left-hand side. And so you get to full-on assault this right-hand side of the map and start looking for that Pyromancer, get even further ahead.
Yeah, you want to when it's RelentlessOne, who might actually be the strongest player on the map right now. Plenty of ways to look at that discussion, but fully stacked Transcendence, had a 2-level lead over Uzzy, level 15. Highest in the game outside of the Hunters. Playing around this chalk, a good look for the Kaolin Wardens as well. Pyromancer immediately pulled. So no answer back on the neutral objectives from the Xibalba Storm. Uzzy taunted in by Cyno. Eagles rally though, grabs a double stun, but Cyno with the beads, able to counter that out. Centaurus from Peel, from range, from InMyZen. forces Cyno back, and Magicfeet able to fill that space and grab a return kill. Pull from Geno, no good. RelentlessOne now trying desperately to escape. Masterful shot, doesn't get it, but Joshy now adds a kill, and out of nowhere, the Xibalba Storm have reignited the game.
And look, this is, again, where they were in game number 2. All it takes is one fight. Is it the same kind of concept that gets them in there? No, but the damage numbers look good in their favor. Zen is a menace to be messed with at this point. And being able to pick up an objective like that at the end, I mean, Dave, this is the most even 20 minutes of gameplay that we've gotten, I think, in this set so far, right? Both Game 1 and Game 2. Game 1, Wardens are very far ahead by this point. Game 2, Storm, very, well, maybe not very far ahead by this point. In fact, actually, that might have been the starting of the turning point for the Wardens. But at this point, I mean, going blow for blow, kill for kill in a lot of instances, and being able to show up objective for objective, right? Fight after fight. I think it's going to be this first fire giant that makes a big difference. Map state's not too wildly out of control. Both teams are only missing a single tower. Like, this is really the kind of position where you know, you'll find yourselves one big mistake, one team fight that goes in the other way, whether it's fantastic play for them. That's what makes the difference and wins you the set.
Is this a mistake or a great call from the Kaolin Wardens? Start up the fire giant, double time from Cyno, knock up from Geno. The chain CC is effective from the Wardens, but the damage just not quite there. Disengaged from the Storm, blink forward from Cyno, but in place. He is locked, but he is not taken down, and Cyno lives in the back of the Harpy Pit before Joshy deals the killing blow. So a 1-for-1 trade. Won't get any worse, though it could because Uzzy is low as well. Gotta be a kill here, and one drops for Griff.
I mean, just being, again, opening one up. 2-for-1, Cyno versus getting rid of Uzzy and getting rid of Oceans. And if that Fire Giant play wasn't going to work just then, it would absolutely work now. It's just the timing. Without Cyno, your burn damage disappears a little bit. I don't know. With Moswal and Griff, you probably had enough. They have a one-man advantage still. I don't mind them leveraging that against the map, getting some of the more secure, let's call them, gold deposits that are around the board, and putting that in there. Might. Could have lost them a little bit more. Griff just gets out of there, though. And it does give a reset period for the Storm, though, where the Wardens might have been able to eke out at FG.
Yeah, maybe, but
again, risk versus reward.
Especially in a Game 3, and Gore, to recontextualize, these two teams very close.
Yeah, this is an important win.
Right, both of these teams are 2-2, if I remember correctly. Yep, 2-2 in the standings. And a couple of teams that'll play later on have one win. And so I don't remember exactly how all the tiebreakers break down, but if you want to avoid one of the 1-3 teams improving potentially to 2-3 and you dropping to 2-3 and then having to worry about tiebreakers, this matters as far as confirming your spot at the next stage playoffs. If you win, you're in. If you lose, then you go to tiebreakers if one of the Tanuki or the Weavers are able to find a win later on this week.
And that's a big deal, right? Because, you know, you talk about tiebreakers, set standings, like your win-loss period is what matters most first, right? So, like, if you're 3-2, they're 2-3, you got more wins, you're set. Things like that. And so, as you mentioned, important for them. Of course, you know, some sets later on this week, potentially shaking that up even more so. I think the Weavers are playing the Hounds.
Yeah.
Talk about a tall order for them to play upset. But it could be a big difference for them, depending on how this set shakes out.
I mean, look at
eye-opening.
Look at like Tanuki and Sages. Tanuki are 1-3. Sages are 2-2. If the Tanuki win, they'll be 2-3. Sages will be 2-3, and then head-to-head goes to the Tanuki. Nothing's guaranteed except great engages with RelentlessOne. Joshy on the back pedal is able to return fire and snags a kill onto Cyno. InMyZen was the first to go down. Now Oceans and Magicfeet split in the engagement. Oceans on the Xing Chen, only so much you can do. The Kaolin Wardens at their second of the team fight.
I like this. Again, press the advantage while you have it. You're in a 4v3. Uzzy's the only one nearby right now. One's in mid. You got a Trebuchet pushing up on left. You got to do something with the amount of pressure you have. And even if it's just a Fury, it's an Oni Fury. So that's going to give you, again, pressure necessary, whether it's to fight the Trebuchet or to maybe push out that Fire Giant. I don't know. They've got a lot of secure here.
This one is low. And I thought Joshy might have time to step up.
Same.
Put some damage towards the Fury there, but not to be. Trebuchet walks in, Magicfeet. Look, actually, you know, all things considered, Gore, Xibalba Storm are doing a lot with a little in a moment like this. Yes, you lose the Fury. Yes, you lose the team fight by 1 kill. That is a great split push by Magicfeet.
Yep.
The Trebuchet knocks down a tower on left as well. And so if you talk about opening up win conditions, there's now a Phoenix exposed on right, a tier 2 tower on left, one big thrown team fight, one big team fight win, and suddenly your avenue into the Kaolin Wardens base is a lot easier. So, though the gold and all that isn't flowing in your favor after that, it keeps it a lot closer to even and actually finds you some advantages.
Very much even just reflecting on the way that fight goes. Losing 2 people and the Fury. With the amount of gold that's separate, the map state's way more important to me than what they just lost. I think that they are as equal as you can get, as balanced as you can get in terms of level for the most part. In fact, you've got advantages across the way for the Storm in a lot of roles except for solo. Losing out the Pyromancer does start to shift a little more back over toward the Wardens. But like you said, one good team fight, you've got an open Phoenix you can just run down. You can easily knock down that tier 1 in mid. I mean, it's half health already, and it's 23, approaching 24 minutes into the game. That one's going to be pretty easy. So at this point, you've set up a good line of defense. You gave up something that, while it is important to get and was good for the Wardens, is not going to be the end of the game for you. To the point where I would even argue you could lose a Fire Giant, technically, and still come back from it if you're either squad. You don't really want to do that, though. You can help.
I guess Griff and RelentlessOne were just damage checking the FG, see what's what, see if anything's going to happen. Ward clearing now happening in the Fire Giant pit. Xibalba Storm at least have an idea of what's going on. And in moments like this, you do have to zoom out because we're in all likelihood going to get a bit of a Fire Giant dance here. Really, the left side of the map is where you have to look. Both teams have a tier 2 tower. The waves crashing into one another in the middle of the wave. Have been desperate for a play like this to happen, and actually may bait the Xibalba Storm. 3 of them grouped up. Zen pulled back by Geno. Zen into Centaurus. That'll be the first kill for the Kaolin Wardens after the ultimate times out, and RelentlessOne grabs it. Joshy over in mid. Ripping Emblem used. Follow up by Uzzy. And good Lord of the Afterlife pushes the Kaolin Wardens back a bit. But Uzzy does too much. And Gore, this is chaotic. A 2-for-2 trade. Duo lane down for the Wardens. And the side lane's down for the Storm.
I mean, look, 4-0-1. Joshy gets a lot of damage out there and is a huge turnaround point for him. Magicfeet makes some big plays. I think Geno and Griff getting taken down there is a huge deal. Otherwise, Kaolin Wardens, that's a Fire Giant. That's a potential win, at least 3 tier 2s and a Phoenix. And so that's a good spot to be able to find some dubs on the back end. But the biggest thing for me, and this is something that I think you're going to have to be more wary of in your Storm play, Heimdallr's vision is so helpful in a lot of these. And I'm going to take people back to the days of Odin, when his passive used to be that he had extended vision range because of his crows looking over the walls. Very similar concept. You throw the sword up, gives you that extended vision range here if you're Heimdallr, and that is giving you intel that you otherwise wouldn't have to engage there. And I think that's where RelentlessOne comes in. They get in there, they get in deep, they kick that fight off. It's just good retaliation from the Storm that makes it go as even as it does. Otherwise, I mean, the game state's looking a lot worse for them. And so impressive play from them, and you get a feel for what the goal is. Right. Kill Zen. Zen's going to do a lot of damage. Zen did a lot of damage even though he died. So you really want to try and control that Chiron as much as possible. But Dave, I'm starting to think there might be a new threat on the block because I'm looking at Joshy's player damage, I'm looking at Joshy's KDA. I'm worried about Joshy surviving in these fights. If you're the Wardens, that Huang cannot be free firing.
Great game for the Huang and fans of Huang out there. I mean, so often we've seen this, the ability to poke from range, confirm kills. But also even in I look at like Paul at the SPL core, even when not completely finishing off kills. Just massive damage, almost regardless, later on in the game. Winning, losing, once you get to this point in your build, you steal so much range poke damage, and that's what the Storm have to play with. And the Kaolin Wardens have to play against, because from range, Joshy and Zen will be very, very effective. So around the Fire Giant we look. Again, map state still feeling pretty similar. Not much to worry about on left. No teleports for either of the solo laners. And so it's just about who steps up, who overextends. I guess Geno, you don't have the taunt anymore if you're Oceans. but, you know, you still have the Whirlwind of Rage and Steel if you can get in there, burn off some of those beads. As of right now, everyone does not have their beads. A lot of them very close to being in sync with one another. But I think the Warden's playing too safe to capitalize.
The enemy has fully powered their
Yeah, they
allies.
can't really. I mean,
Your
it's
team
that
has
risk,
fully
right?
powered the
You
allies.
mentioned the weight of the set, the weight of this win
I wonder how much set
for a
weighs.
lot of these. How much set like the God weighs?
Feels like it'd be pretty light with his ability to kind of dash around and.
Turn to. Well, I guess he doesn't turn to sand. He spawns clones made of sand, but.
Well, if they're clones and they're made of sand, is he made of sand?
Is he made of sand? Is a gingerbread man sitting in a house made of flesh? Or is he made of house?
Is he made of house? I'd rather be made of house, I think.
Than sitting in a house made of flesh? Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Man, you got me. Anubis has scales for that, by the way. You could probably weigh him,
Yeah.
like, appropriately. I think it's usually used for hearts, but who cares? Either way, I think that is what it is, right? The weight of the set is
I wonder how much set weighs. Just kidding. I did it again.
If
I'm
we
sorry.
had, what would have been great is if we had stuck with it for a little bit longer and just given like the worst sense of deja
Right.
vu to everybody.
Right.
No, but yeah, it's important for both of these teams, and so playing a little safer, like you said, maybe too safe to capitalize on some things that otherwise would have been great, but it's something that you're going to expect. A heavy set at the end of the season could be the difference between Masters or having to go to relegations, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a
difference,
huge
right.
difference for what you're experiencing in 4th and 5th place. You don't want to mess that up by stepping one step too far forward.
Yeah, you don't guarantee to just get to like hang out in the SEC. If you're in the top 4, you're going to playoffs, and bottom 2, you're headed to relegations. Uzzy being run at. Body blocks from RelentlessOne, more annoying than anything. Whirlwind of Rage and Steel forces some beads, but only sends one back. Oceans left running. Double knockup and silence from RelentlessOne, who grabs the first. Grip in for the second. And the Xibalba Storm, the ones that are overextended in mid. The initiation swift by the Kaolin Wardens, and 3 kills drop.
All right, look, getting Uzzy, not only getting Uzzy, but getting Uzzy 10 seconds behind everybody else means now you are in an even better position. Again, slashing people down. The Storm numbers advantage is so heavily in your favor. The level of play that it would be for someone to try and steal this would not only be insane, but then to get away with it, yeah, absolutely impossible. So I think the Storm making the only right call right here. Defend as best you can and set yourselves up for what is hopefully going to be a strong defense for you. The Wardens, however, you almost wish you would have waited 10 more seconds. They're not going to have any crazy respawns on the other side. That would have been an EFG. That would have made these Phoenixes even easier.
Yep.
Considering by the time you hit the Phoenix line, they are going to have the numbers back for the Storm.
It will.
Well, maybe not if you rush this one.
Yeah, you'll get this Phoenix without Uzzy if you immediately force the fight. Remember, things like this can open up game ending. If you're fighting a 5v4, you're able to pick up a kill on, say, Magicfeet maybe, then you can force down the rest of the Phoenix. I think smart from the Xibalba Storm here to back themselves away, and the Kaolin Wardens will attempt to do the same as well, but Uzzy instead trying to fight Joshy! A massive follow-up on the initiation from Uzzy as well. But, unfortunately for the Storm, all 5 members of the Wardens keep their Fire Giant buff.
Keep their buff, keep their lives, get to fall back and be comfortable. Look, the Titan, 2 towers still standing. Especially, again, with the less that it hit, it's going to be difficult to take on. 4 people, that's enough to ward you away pre-9-5. Now, it should easily be a thing to kind of ward you away and force you out of there. So, I like the call. Fall back, you just got a good chunk of gold, so I expect to see a lot of items. There was just a full, straight-up bot soul gem there by Moswal. Same thing, I believe, there for, what was it, the Spirit Robe for Chino. So a lot of investment that's getting bought up by the Wardens. It's going to pay off for them, unfortunately, for Cyno. Has to wait for his team to be able to finish the Fury proper. But they're going to be able to get that. And look, Dave, afterward, the killing of the 2 towers is not going to be too troublesome for him. I wouldn't be surprised here in a second to see it grouping up on left after Cyno resets. And then a push towards the Phoenix for probably 3 members, then send the other 2 or 1, depending on if it's Cyno or Cyno Plus, like Moswal, Cyno Plus, RelentlessOne, over towards that middle lane. Let them knock down that tier 2 and start pressuring that Phoenix.
You know what? I will say for the Morrigan Le Fay, been able to keep pace with some of the late game damage that Joshy's done. You know, obviously a couple thousand behind, but I think with Morrigan Le Fay, it's felt like there have just been better options. Not so much that Morrigan Le Fay is like the worst mid laner there is, right? But like there have been better options as far as mid lane goes. But You get range damage, you can poke, you can build burst, and Moswal has been able to keep pace with one of the highest damage dealing late game mages that we've had in our meta here in the last little bit of time. So I need more convincing, but I'm on my way. If this game ends up being closed out for the Kaolin Wardens, of course. Oceans for the backline. Again, get some beads, but that's it. Gryph has got enough damage at this point in the game to shred the Xing. Cyno can do the same to Zen, and now the Kaolin Wardens knocking on the door of a Game 3 win. Left side Phoenix is an afterthought because Uzzy is in the afterlife, and the Kaolin Wardens rally around the Titan, and they will win game number 3.
Look, it's a heavy investment up front to kill off Oceans, but worthwhile for you, right? You get a massive win, and I think that is a very big swing for their favor. Again, looking at the weight of this set and how much that matters, small positioning is the big deal. We saw it in game 2. I think we get to see it there in game 1. You're still in your Phoenix, but there is a line that you don't cross when there's a taunt on the other side, and that Erlang taunt came out fast. Cyno with the shred that they had was just a little too much to bear. Burning through the tank makes it way easier. I mean, worst case scenario for you after that kill, you're getting the Phoenix, probably the other one as well. Best case scenario is what we just saw. You get to run through the team and then find the kill at the very end. So I think that was just really well played by the Wardens to take the patience they had.
Wardens just love this snowball style of playing SMITE, don't they? I mean, game 1 spirals out of control against the Storm. Game number 3 feels much the same. Takes a little bit longer to get there, but once that bit of a lead is kind of sought out, the Wardens end up running away with it. And then game 2, the Storm do kind of the same thing, slow down, able to end up winning the game nonetheless. And what a dynamic pick, or this chalk ended up being for RelentlessOne, and then Cyno consistent as ever on the Erlang Shen.
I mean, it's the Erlang, the amount of shred that pick did was impressive, but also the damage numbers from it, right? I think the taunts, the presence that it was able to afford itself was massive for his shred, but then the follow-up shred, the follow-up damage, Gryph was able to be huge in a lot of these team fights. And like you said, credit where credit's due. I think Moswal was playing a pick that, while I don't think of it as meta, it had the Moswal difference was that it made every single hit matter. All the damage was still there. And like, I think to afford it into the conversation, is she a bad pick? By no means is she a bad pick. Is she going to be the top of the meta in the next week? Probably not. Is Moswal still going to look good on her when he plays her? Evidently. Hell yeah.
Brutal game. Dual lane of the Storm goes combined 0-8. 0-8 for Oceans and InMyZen. Of course, combined 0-4 for each of them. So split it right down the middle. Uzzy at 1-5. I mean, it was just tough for the initiators. Oceans not nearly as effective on the Xing as the Athena was in game number 2. I think that was a big pivot. And Gore, you were right about Anubis, by the way. I didn't want to weave this in during the ending of a pretty important game. But now that we've broken it down, we can. He weighed a person's heart on one side against the feather of truth, a feather of truth.
Yeah.
And so
and if it's like, I think if it sinks, that's bad. You didn't live a good life, and you go to the whatever their equivalent of like hell is. Right?
Yeah, right.
And then if it's equal, you get to like you're good. You go to the fields of whatever.
Those who had earned eternal life were led to heaven. The condemned were devoured by Amit, the goddess of retribution. So you got eaten by a goddess.
Side note: if you like Egyptian mythology, watch Moon Knight.
Yeah, there you go.
It was real good.
Shameless plug. Let's take a look back at the schedule, or a look forward, I suppose, in North Americans' case, because we've only gotten one set taken care of so far this week. And remember, the final week of this phase in the SEC, Kaolin Wardens 2-1 over the Xibalba Storm. Yomi Tanuki versus Athenian Sages is up next. And then if you want to watch the Eldritch Hounds versus the Anansi Weavers, make sure you tune in on July 9th. That is Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time. That'll be prior to the SPL kicking off for that day. And still very important standings matches to look at. So Yomi Tanuki and the Athenian Sages Gore vying for the same thing. Kaolin Wardens, they're through now. The Eldritch Hounds, of course, they're through. But Yomi Tanuki, if they win, they'll improve to 2-3, drop the Sages to 2-3, and that'll create an interesting dynamic with tiebreakers. Sages would love to avoid that. They would love to just grab their third win, knock down another team. And so this next set, Gore, might the most important of the phase so far here in the North American SEC.
A big win here, like you said, for the Tanuki can shake up everything. That being said, the opposite can also be true, which is that if the Sages win, it gets a lot less interesting, right? Because all of a sudden everything's a little more balanced. I think then the only other potential tie is at the very bottom, right? If the Wardens can beat the Hounds, that changes some stuff on Saturday. But it becomes much more niche if the Tanuki don't win this one.
Excited to see what the Tanuki and the Sages can get done in our fourth and final best-of-3 set of the day. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to go get devoured by Amat, the goddess of retribution, and we'll be right back for the North American SEC.